All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be a stellar podcast today. I'm joined by an old friend, a woman that's a teacher in the community, the woman that brought me in for the Reaching Higher program in Fowlerville. I really think we're going to share some incredible insights together. So right before we get into it, I want to shout out Vet Life. Vet Life is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties when they transition from active duty back to civilian life, and Vet Life is there to ease that transition. If you want to reach out to Vet Life, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, I want to introduce Michelle Spisz. Michelle, I don't want to steal your thunder here, so I'm going to let you do the introduction on like your bio, your background, who you are in the community. I saw that you're running for county commissioner. I had no idea. So there's so much stuff that I'm looking forward to discussing today on the podcast. And as you know from a couple of my episodes, I'm going to start at the very beginning of your story, and we're going to build up to what you are today. But if we had to just quickly go over some of the hats that you wear in your current stage, what would those be?
Okay, well, I am a jack of all trades, master of maybe none, but working on them every day. I wear many hats. I'm a mother, which is something I'm super proud of. I have 6 sons, 4 bonus sons, and Justice and Lorenzo, whom I adopted from foster care in Flint. And I'm a wife to my wonderful husband, John Spisz, who's the love of my life, and glad I got a second chance at love. And other than that, I'm an educator for Fowlerville Junior High. I teach 8th grade, science, and yearbook. So shout out to my kidlets. And I am a Reaching Higher instructor. However, we are not currently doing Reaching Higher, so that was kind of sad.
I was devastated to hear that. I was actually just having coffee in Brighton last week,
Yeah.
and one of the fundraising directors or something like that,
Yep.
Jane, I think. I have her business card in my wallet, but she had told me that it's no longer in Fowlerville, and I was like, what?
I know, I was devastated. Unfortunately, that was one of the fallouts of the pandemic, not being able to bring guests into schools and having different policies that came and went. And so we've kind of gone a different direction with a different program, which is also great. However, my heart's still reaching higher. I mean, I have the tattoo on my arm, so it's not like I'm reaching higher, still not in my heart. So I am still a skilled Reaching Higher instructor and supporter of the program. I love veterans. I do anything that I can to support our veterans. I am the VFW Teacher of the Year twice for the local, the district, and the entire state of Michigan. So that's an honor that I hold really close to my heart. Aside from that, in my spare time, right, which I have very little of, I love to travel. I'm definitely a foodie. I love going to different restaurants and pretending that I'm a food blogger, which really I kind of am. I have a significant following, so I like to think on some small level I may influence someone to go to a restaurant that they may have not tried if I didn't go.
I would have never listed food critic as one of your credentials, but now I will.
Yes, please do. Please do. So I love food. I love to exercise, so that's something that my husband and I enjoy a lot. We love the fights. As you know, I follow a lot of the greats. We love Josh a lot, and Bobby. Those are 2 that we follow all the time. So other than that, I just am doing my best job to live my best life.
All right, so let's tell the Michelle Spisz story. So the way that I start every podcast is
Okay.
I don't want to know about the person you are today. I want to go all the way back to where you were born and raised. What were the things that were super influential to you as a child? Like, what were the shaping things that happened in your childhood, or, whether it was influence from athletics or influence from certain teachers, the family unit at home, whatever it was, kind of take me all the way back and build up how you became the woman that you are today.
I think I became the woman that I am today solely because of my family. I mean, as a young child, I was given up for adoption. I was in foster care for a couple of months. I do not know my foster parent, but that's somebody that I would love to get to know someday. I'll kind of get to that. I first knew I was adopted at the age of 5. I had been talking about wanting a brother. And so when I turned 5 years old, I can vividly remember that that was my first memory of being adopted, that my parents told me that I was super loved. And in fact, I was so loved that the people that made me knew that they couldn't do the best job with me. So they gave me to my parents. So I was chosen, I was wanted, and I was incredibly loved. And I think that, as far as an adoption story, was fundamental in who I became, because I never questioned if I was loved. So at 5 years old, we drove to downtown Detroit. My dad had worked for Chrysler at the time, so we borrowed the super fantastic Polaroid camera to take to Detroit with us. And I remember I saw a rat on the way. That's a really vivid memory, like a very large mouse, I thought, but apparently those are called rats. And we went downtown Detroit and we went in a really, really tall building. Still don't know exactly which one it was. And I got a brother. And so we met with his foster parents and the workers and in this big tall building, and I got a real live brother. And we took the picture with the Polaroid and returned that to work the next day, and that's my first picture that I have of my brother and I. My brother and I are not biologically related, but of course we're very much brother and sister. And so I think my adoption story really, from the get, helped shape who I was, because I grew up in a family that was very open-minded. My father always told me that, if not me, then who? So, if I didn't like something, well, if you don't like it, then what are you going to do to change it? Because you can sit and cry about it or sit and stew about it, but if you're not going to get on your own 2 feet and stand up and do something, then your complaints are pretty much useless. I was raised, my dad was a Vietnam veteran. He stayed stateside, but I grew up knowing how important that freedom wasn't free, that veterans were super important. My grandfather was a veteran. My mom stayed at home with us, so I had a stay-at-home mom, which was, I think, a blessing. Didn't really realize it maybe at the time, but, especially in the teenage years when I was like, seriously, why are my parents always home when I'm home? But they were always there. I grew up in Farmington Hills. I lived the first 5 or 6 years of my life in Dearborn Heights, and then my family moved to Farmington Hills, and that's where the significant part of my later childhood and teenage years were. And I definitely would say going to Farmington Hills Harrison was pivotal in who I became. Strong traditions in athletics, strong traditions in education. But I just grew up I had a great childhood. I couldn't have asked for anything different. My parents were fantastic. My brother was fantastic. It was a little rough at first when you ask for a brother at 5 and they get you one. And he gets there and then he's messing with your stuff. And it's like, seriously, do we have to keep him? Like, I don't know if I knew. Why did we trust me at 5 to make these life-altering decisions? But, I wouldn't trade him for anything now.
So you had a really good childhood.
I had a great childhood.
Like adoption was a massive part of your origin story, and it's a massive part of your life now. Adoption has been, intertwined with your story very intimately.
Absolutely.
When you were in school, you said athletics was a big part of the school. Were you in multiple sports? Did you learn a lot from sports? What were the things that kind of shaped you? Because you were the adopted child, and that was a part of your identity. But what would you say were the other parts of the things that made you feel like an individual, like your identity at a young age?
I think my identity as a young age as well was travel. My parents always provided us the opportunity to travel. So not only overseas and seeing how things were different, I think everybody should take an opportunity to leave at some point, because a lot of times the things that you take for granted, simple things, everyday things, food, water, shelter, those types of basic needs, you go somewhere else and you see how different things are, and you come back, you just appreciate everything, clean air. So my parents provided me with some phenomenal travel opportunities as a child. We also had a place up north. So up north is super special. So not always the big overseas trips, but the smaller family, let's go to the cabin, you bait your own hook, you take your fish off, you know how to clean your fish. And I think that a lot of those experiences of being outside, playing in the mud, doing all the things that my brother did, because my dad always said my gender shouldn't ever stand in the way of what I wanted to do. Doing all of those things helped to make me into a science lover. We watched the sky. I knew the names of the constellations. I knew bones, and I knew all kinds of quirky science stuff. And I think that those early childhood things with my dad and my mom up north helped me to, want to travel the world, want to do things, want to embrace other cultures. We would do Native American events up north. We would go to, at the time, they were called ethnic festivals downtown Detroit. And we would go to the theater, and we would do all of these different things. And then as far as attending high school, Farmington Hills Harrison, Coach Harrington, John Harrington, just retired. Well, he didn't really retire. The school closed. He opened our school and he closed our school. But he was the winningest coach in the state of Michigan for football. So I was a cheerleader. I was on the pom-pom squad. I ran track, but partially that was only because the track kids went on spring break, and my parents were pretty conservative and pretty strict. So my plan was, if I wanted to go on spring break, if I just ran a little bit, they went to Clemson in Carolina, and I liked the Carolinas. So I ran track. I also participated in a lot of the clubs and things like that. I was in the band, 3-time state championship flautist. So my senior year, I didn't do band because I wanted to cheer for football. And so sports were always a thing. I mean, that was part of our community growing up, that you go and you support your friends in their sporting events, and that you yourself stay in some sort of shape with your eating and your physical activity. It was expected that you do something. My parents were not the kind of people that I could have just sat around. I absolutely needed to be doing something. Some kind of physical activity was super important.
Looking back and reflecting, and by the way, nostalgia must be incredibly strong for you because, yeah, as I'm listening to your story, that's the woman that you are today in a lot of ways. Now, you still want to see the world, you still want to travel, you still want to take in as much experience as possible and enjoy the arts and enjoy music. Like, your story is really the same throughout your life.
That's fantastic that it shows.
Yeah, I can hear it in the story, and nostalgia is obviously very powerful to you. You probably reflect back to those times and love and value and appreciate those times of your life.
Absolutely.
Looking back, and when you say things like, I had like strict parents, are you thankful for that now, that they enforce you to kind of get out in the world, like that friendly push, kind of like Reaching Higher would refer to, like leaving the nest, being like, no, you're going to be out there, you're going to be engaged with the community, you're going to be hands-on, and
looking back, absolutely. I mean, at the time, I think you never appreciate your parents fully until you either become one or you see the reflection of your parents in yourself. When those words, those values, those things fall out of your mouth and you go, where's my dad? Where's my mom? Oh, I just said, or did whatever, whether you're a parent or not. But I do think that influenced me in a good way. In Reaching Higher, we talk about breaking ropes, getting out of your own way. And I can remember a time I came home and I told my mom, hey, I'm going to try out for the pom squad. And she said, you're going to do what? Which was like the dance team for the football players. She said, you did dance when you were small, but like, are you serious right now? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, I don't really think you're going to make it. And she was being honest. She really didn't think I was going to make it. And at the time I was like, that's so harsh. But it also propelled me forward because I went, watch this. And I went and I did make it. Now, maybe I wasn't the best one out there, but I gave it everything I had. And I think pushing me out of the nest, telling me it wasn't an option just to sit around, lay around all summer. You were going to go do things. It was important to us to take care of our neighbors, to, keep an eye out on the elderly. It was expected, and family time was something that my family valued. We ate at the dinner table every single night. My mom made home-cooked meals. Going up north was something my parents did when they were dating. And then it's something that's carried on throughout the years. So, yeah, definitely. I think that sometimes being strict is okay. I'm my child's parent first. I'm not their friend.
I think it's wonderful to hear that because I don't have children of my own, but I have my fiance's son that I'm trying to be the best, father figure that I can be and the best mentor that I can be. And I've realized, like, when you care about somebody, it's the same way with, I hate to reference children and then a dog, but like, even with my dog, like when you love something very, very deeply, you almost sometimes struggle to give the right discipline and structure and
Yes.
support that they actually need because, like, the feeling, is first.
Because you're all the feels.
Exactly.
And they're cute.
100%. So you care first, so you want to do everything there. But looking back and reflecting, because I feel the same way. I had a strict father. I knew the rules that I could break, and I knew the rules that I could not break.
Absolutely.
And I knew there was going to be consequences if I wasn't held or if I didn't live up to the standards that he was setting. And when I look back, I'm like extremely thankful for that because although when you're young, it might be this little bit of discomfort, like, man, why are you pushing me like this? I don't want to do that. It is really for our best interest to be held accountable like that, and
well, we thrive for that.
100%.
We don't realize, but it's discipline. It's helping you with your self-worth and developing who you are because there were times that we butt heads. But they wanted me to be able to stand on my own 2 feet when I did that, not so-and-so. I can remember my dad, I don't care as much about all your friends. Because it was, well, Dad, everyone's going. Well, I don't care. And they used to say lines like, but I love you the most. And I find myself doing that with my sons. Like, I understand everybody else is doing that. But see, I love you more than any other parent could ever love you. And so I just need you to respect that you're not going to do that too. And it's the same thing with my students. They know where the line is. I'm really, really nice till I'm not.
Yeah, and honestly, society just has so many traps and so many pitfalls and so many things that you can get sucked into as a young child
Oh,
because
my
you're
goodness,
naive,
yes.
you don't really know, you think you know better, you think like, oh, it won't be me, and
Right.
there's just a million traps that you can fall into. It's like your parents are trying to guide you. Your parents and influential people in your life
Right.
that are good people are trying to do everything in their power to get you to navigate this route correctly.
Right.
And it's difficult, especially because a lot of the times the kid or the mentoree is looking up and being like, well, let me make my own decisions. And
Right.
they can't see it from the perspective of like, we are trying to help you to avoid so many of the pitfalls of society.
And there's so many. I mean, I'm blessed beyond measure that I grew up without the internet. I mean, as much as I respect, I mean, here I am sitting on my first podcast using all these pieces of technology, and I'm definitely not a technophobe by any means. But I grew up without the internet. If you wanted to bully me, you had to meet me at my locker. You had to shove that note in my locker, and then you had to tell me you were going to meet me by the dumpster. And maybe you were bringing your friends. Maybe you had to come alone. And then when you had to apologize because you got caught, and your parents would march you over to that person's house, and you would have to, stand there and face them and their parents and your behavior and own it. Where now, young people, I mean, they can, from 5 seconds, 5,000 people can have the photo or the picture or the, whatever the incident was, and the name calling and the thing, and you can't take it back.
Yeah, it's almost allowed like this evil side of people to flourish easier because even back in the day, like you said, to bully someone, you almost had to have a little bit of courage because
did.
there was a lot of consequences that could come from it.
Yeah.
And those consequences might have kept you from fully being
Yeah,
as
those
vile as you could.
consequences kept me from being a jerk quite a few times.
Yeah.
Because I knew I was going to be held accountable. I knew my dad was going to march me over there.
Well, and that's a huge part of it too, though, is the parents were involved and engaged in a way of like, if you act out like that, like I'm going to come down upon you.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's a huge thing in parenting where it's like, no, that's not my kid. It's like we have irrefutable evidence that it is your kid. And they're like, no, that's
Yep.
not my child.
Right.
And that's a second part to the problem where it almost has to, if you're not getting the discipline and structure from home, all of a
Then
sudden,
where are you getting it?
exactly. It has to come from the internal. You know what I mean? Like, unless you have a good moral compass just innately
Right.
from birth, which some people do,
Some do,
but some don't.
but many don't.
You know what I mean? And it's unfortunate that a lot of the times people have to, be guided into being good people. But like you said, there's less barriers of, stopping someone from being a bully nowadays.
Oh, absolutely.
You can jump on the internet, jump in somebody's DMs, and send the most
Yep.
toxic, evil stuff. And even if you just look at our culture, the most offensive, horrific, terrible things are like shared all over, laughed at. It's funny. It's dark humor. And I'm like, man, something's wrong with a lot of you people. 'Cause,
There
like,
is, and the anonymity of it, the fact that you can do those things and act as if you're not responsible.
Well, and
You are.
unfortunately, you can make fake profiles. So there's people out
Right.
there that'll make fake profiles, and and then the way they can say the most evil shit possible, and there's no real consequences. To me, like, first of all, if you're not even in your own profile picture on Facebook, I already have a less respect for you because there's something. Maybe if it's your family or something like that, I get
Right.
that. But if you're not even there, you don't even feel good to represent yourself.
Truth.
That's some reflection to do. And a lot of the times the people that I see putting this like incredibly hateful stuff out there, I've like, if this is anecdotal, but almost always I'll find that they're not even in their own profile picture.
That is a very intriguing observation.
And I'm like, wow, it's probably because you don't even have enough pride in yourself to stand on being proud of who you are. So of course you're being toxic to the world.
I agree with
Of
that.
course you're hating on everybody.
Yeah, self-worth is something that it needs to be taught. And it's harder and harder because there's that instant comparison. I mean, back in the day, if you didn't invite me to your birthday, I didn't know you didn't invite me to your birthday because I didn't see immediately on social media that, Joey and Bobby and everybody else was at your birthday, but Michelle was not at your birthday.
Do you think this is a huge factor into why children are, almost every kid now is diagnosed with anxiety. Like it's every single kid that I talk to is almost like proud, like, oh, I have bad anxiety. I have anxiety. It's like that is a phenomenon that has come on so unbelievably fast. Like we struggled a lot when we were kids, and we're from different age groups, but like
Yes.
we struggled a lot as kids, but you knew that struggle was a part of life. Like
I agree.
Like when you struggled, you had to find a way to kind of pick yourself up because you knew struggle was going to happen.
Right.
You knew that unfortunately there's some mean people in the world, some tragic events are going to take place, some
Right.
problems, that you don't expect are going to be just around the corner. But you built yourself so that you can kind of get through it. Like,
Right.
you remember the old, like, sticks and stones?
Oh,
you remember
yeah.
that?
Yeah.
I mean, we had
all those great little phrases we used.
We had to have some resiliency, right?
We had to have resiliency. I never liked sticks and stones, though, because words do hurt.
No,
That piece of it I didn't like.
they absolutely do. And it was just a way of telling yourself that, like, it'll be okay.
It'll be okay.
That's all it was.
And
I mean,
that's
'cause-
what young people need. They need to hear that, I purposely choose to teach junior high. And when I jokingly say they're the fun ones, it's because they know everything and nothing. They're at that awkward age that if you, open the door right now and somebody rolled in with lights and $1 million worth in pennies. I want it in pennies because it's going to look like more, So it'd be dramatic. I would turn it down to go back to being in junior high. It's awful. It's awful. It was the most awful years of my life. We got to part of my story, but junior high, we don't need to talk about that chapter because I don't like that chapter. I don't know many people that do. But young people need to know that they have a group of people that they trust. They need to know that it does get better because I see so many people, like you said, with anxiety, with depression, with all kinds of things. And I don't know what the difference is, why we didn't have labels back in the day. I mean,
not
I didn't
even just labels. Every kid now,
like everything. We didn't have any of that.
I would say like 90% of kids now would say they're like struggling badly.
Right.
That was not the common thing. There was struggle.
There was struggle. There was strife. There were all the same
Absolutely.
issues and things minus the internet.
Yep.
That's the only thing I can say I didn't have that kids now have that I can't really tell you what it's like to navigate your childhood or your adolescent years with the internet because it wasn't a thing.
Yeah, I had it, but it was like just getting into its prominence. And there wasn't the like Instagram or
Right.
everybody show your highlight reel every day so we can
Right.
all compare each other.
Or
against-
let's do really dumb challenges that we know are dumb, like claim evidence reasoning. We know they're dumb. We know we can get hurt, but we're going to do it because we're so addicted to likes and tweets and retweets and all
This'll
the other
get me noticed.
tickety tockety whatever, all those things.
I'm not really sure what that comes down to. Like everybody like notice me.
Self-worth,
Like,
I
I'm
think.
relevant. I don't know what the driving factor is. Yeah, but what I mean, your self-worth exists just because people know you.
To me, my self-worth exists because I give it to myself. I've
Yeah.
always said that I have an unhealthy dose of self-worth. It's so high that if somebody does something unkind, it just knocks me down a little bit, but I'm still okay.
Yeah, well, that's what self-worth is. It's the value you hold for yourself. It doesn't come from the world.
No.
I value if someone's like James is this,
Right.
it doesn't bother me at all because I'm like, they don't know me.
But how did we learn that?
I mean,
You and I. Like, where'd we get that from?
I
Were we
don't know.
born with it, or do we?
I mean,
Did we
I
learn
think
it?
that was definitely messaging from parents and schools. And back in the day, we talked a lot about your self-worth, and you had to know that there was some bad people in the world. You had to know that there was some
Right.
evil things were going to be said to you. But like, you got to know that you're better than that. You got to know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You have to find something that you love within you, and then it can kind of shine outward. And if other
Right.
people don't see your light, that doesn't mean that you're not light.
No, I'm not dimming mine because you don't see it.
Yeah, it's like so many quotes that we reference.
Well,
right?
of course.
But one of the things that's been fascinating to me, and I've been trying to figure out exactly, I mean, there's so many, it's such a multifaceted problem, but why are kids nowadays so crippled by anxiety? They're afraid to do, in a time where they're more connected than ever. They have more technology than we could have ever dreamed
Right.
of at our ages. They have access to all the information in the world for almost any skill that they want to learn at their fingertips.
That's true.
But like the idea of making a phone call is crippling. Like
That's
to
the
many
truth.
people. That's bizarre.
It is.
It,
Maybe you should have a panel of kids.
yeah, I mean, maybe
I mean, you and I both know from reaching higher sometimes who has the answers, the people that are in it. I listen to my students every day. I don't have the answers to everything in the world, but they do. And lately, unfortunately, I've lost an incredible amount of people in the last month to cancer, which I hate the C word more than almost any other word out there. But every day teaching science, I hope, am I teaching the kid that's going to grow up and fix this? And whether it's cancer or self-worth or whatever, am I teaching the student today that tomorrow, using all of the good tools and all of the good things in the internet and in the world, can they harness all that for good?
Absolutely, and for good, and that's what we need. I mean, there's there's a lot of different directions we can take the future. And
Oh,
there's
absolutely.
There's a lot of different pathways we can go down, and there's a lot of chaos that can ensue, or there's a lot of greatness that's able, to be achieved in this world. There's a lot of wonderful things that can be brought to light. And
Oh, absolutely.
So I mean, you're in an incredibly important role in society that I think doesn't get enough credit. Like a
Thank you.
teacher role should be an incredibly prestigious position within a society, because you are literally educating the next generation of
everything.
of leaders, of everything.
Of everything.
So
There's no one I know that's successful that didn't have an education in a formal school in some way.
but it's a very delicate thing, because like if we don't give teachers the respect they deserve, and then the level of teachers decline because they feel like they're undervalued, they're underappreciated, they're underpaid, whatever it is,
Right.
well then the level that's being passed down to our children is going to get lower and lower and lower and lower.
And that's not an if. That's a reality
Yeah.
across the United States right now. I mean, there is a lack of respect for educators, a lack for respect for education.
There's
and
a lot
it's not
of
about money. It's about, like you said, valuing. Back in the day, when you were an educator, it was a service to the community. Therefore, when you retired, you were taken care of by the community.
You actually had some power back in the day too. Like I remember we had to respect our teachers, or at
Oh,
least
yeah.
it was presented that way. And your parents backed your teacher. If
Absolutely.
your teacher came down on you,
I would have rather stayed at school.
your parents would be like, don't ever let that happen again. Nowadays, teachers have had kind of their power taken away a little bit. The parents are very quick to try to get a teacher fired or blame the teacher if their child is struggling. You've been put in a very interesting situation where it's almost like the kids can blame you,
Yes.
the parents can blame you, and you're sitting there trying to provide a service for someone else's children to make the world better.
Yes.
It's a really interesting dynamic.
It is, and it can be extremely challenging, especially when you have your own children, because so much of your, I don't know what, energy, so much of that energy goes to other people's that you have to work real hard to preserve the fuel for your own.
1,000%. And I felt that because I coach a lot of people in here, and I train kids in here, and I train adults. And when I go home, I try to make it a point to make sure Braden still gets a great version of me.
Exactly. He gets the best of you, too.
And that's difficult. But
It is.
there's been a lot of changing feelings across so many things over the last, especially 5 to 10 years. Like even look at the way that police are viewed now.
I agree.
There is like a nasty wave like attacking police officers. There's an underappreciation for teachers.
Public service in a lot of ways has changed.
Yeah.
The idea is somehow it's an obligation to do those things, and anybody can do it. Anybody can go in. Well, sure, in some ways, anybody can stand in front of a classroom, or anybody can drive a police car. But I mean, think about surgeon. I'm not getting surgery from just anybody. I can go on the internet and Google how to do whatever, but that does not make me qualified.
Yeah. Well, what we want is the most competent people. We
Absolutely.
want the best people possible to be teachers, to want to be teachers.
Yes.
And then we want the best people that are going to pursue being excellent surgeons to be the ones that operate on us.
Absolutely.
And we want the best people that believe in law and order, that want to help people to become police officers.
Absolutely.
Well, if we change the image of the position in society, then you're going to draw a different demographic into
I agree with
those.
that.
And when we were young, like teachers, police officers, firefighters, these things were held in extremely high
Oh,
regard.
yeah.
Because as children, you don't think of salary. You don't really think of
No.
money. You think of what would I like to do that could
Right.
make a difference on the world. And when you come to that realization, you're like, well, a police officer can make a difference. A teacher
Absolutely.
can make a difference. A firefighter can make a difference. Now we're living in a world where these things are almost so undervalued that people are just walking all over them, and it's slowly eroding part of the system.
I agree, and it makes my heart really sad. And I
As a
wish I
teacher,
had
I-
all the answers. I don't, but I think that it's incredibly important. I mean, in the platform of education, to make sure that I'm teaching my students to value veterans. I'm teaching my students to value the people that keep us safe. I mean, we are very, very lucky in Fowlerville to have a liaison officer all the time that can get to me within, I believe, 6 seconds, which 6 seconds matters. And, a police department that runs a summer academy for students. And just a good relationship between the local police department and the schools. Some of those relationship building things are huge. Because I think no matter what you do, it all comes down to relationships.
100%. Well, an integrated community like that, where everybody is trying to work on a healthy
On a
product
common
together.
goal, on a
that is what a healthy society is. And you can take it from small scale to large scale. If we started with our small communities
Right.
and we did things the right way, and then we showed the model as it got larger, because it's much harder to do as you get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Oh, of course, of course.
But it's our responsibility first to become the right type of people.
Absolutely.
And then to replicate that energy out in our direct community and families.
Right.
And then hopefully those people reciprocate that energy to others and to us.
I sure hope so.
And then it grows. So let's go to, because we went on a tangent a little
We
bit
did. You and I in our ADHD rabbit hole, but
and
it's
all good though. Like, I think all of these things are important to discuss. So when you were in high school and you were about to graduate, so you got through junior high,
Yes.
which was really rough times, which is
Yes.
a common theme in many people's stories.
It is. It's just not the chapter that I would want anybody to read in the book.
Yeah.
And luckily, I don't have to write that one.
But
if
I would
don't
also
want to.
think, to be honest, tremendous psychological growth probably happened during that period.
Absolutely.
For you to continue on when you suffer, you have to find
Right.
inner strength. You
Right.
have to find a reason to get up again. You have to find a reason to move
My teachers
forward.
got me through. My teachers, my parents, my support system, the true friends. I mean, I think junior high was a really good time to figure out, number one, who I was and who I really wanted to be unapologetically, and who was going to be bold enough to stand with me and not against me. So many pressures to be something you're not, or to try things that you know are not your things to try. And just kind of that shaping and molding and trying different things and figuring out who do you want to be in the world. And all the way along in my career, I've had some phenomenal educators where, like you said, like there has to be something that makes people do that. Well, back in the day, it was I wanted to be that. They looked like they were having fun. They were always there for me to tell me it gets better. You know, don't give up right now. It gets better, I promise. And they weren't wrong. And they're still in my life.
That's what I mean. Even though you look at that period as a dark period, that is probably the period where you found yourself more than in any other part of your life, because you did, when you cut out everything extra and you go down to this deep place, and it's a dark
when it
place.
gets dark, I mean, I tell people I've been there, I've visited, I don't want to stay there.
Yeah, but that's where you have to find value in you, and you have to
Yeah.
learn to listen to your own voice, and you have to say, you know what, even though they want me to do this,
Right.
that's not me.
That's not who I am.
I'm not doing it.
Right.
So those periods of life are incredibly formative, and I try to tell people when they're going through that darkness, like, first of all, it will end.
Right.
But one day you might even be able to look back and have some appreciation for that
Absolutely.
value. And that's when you know that, like, okay, I pulled the lessons that I needed from there, and I don't need to return. Like,
exactly. Yeah, I'm not signing up for another trip there.
so when you're in high school and you're about to graduate, what do you think the future holds for you? What did you see yourself becoming? What was the next step as you were exiting high school? Because a lot of times you're into that, like, okay, the tutorial mode is over. Did you know you were going
Exactly.
into higher education?
I did.
Let's talk about that.
I did. I always had the goal of going to U of M. That was my top school. And so I applied to quite a few places. My dream of going away to U of M didn't quite happen. The strict parent thing kind of came in. Mom really wanted me to stay home. I was very scared to cut the cords and let me go. So I did end up going to University of Michigan, but I attended the Dearborn campus so that I could commute from home. Still the college experience, but not quite as much of it as I wanted. And that's something that, as I've become an adult, we've reflected on a little bit, where she goes, I should have let you fly. And I said, yeah, you clipped me a little.
Or you could have put your foot down at that period and said, Mom, I'm going. But it would have been a serious battle.
Could have, but the fact that I had some funding supporting me going, and if I chose to go, if I chose to go the other route, perhaps I was funding it on my, it was a smart financial choice to respect my parents' opinion strongly at that time and do what I did. And looking back, there were, reasons for all of that. But I always knew I wanted to go to higher education because I did want to be an educator since I was in 4th grade. So I knew the only way to the path to the classroom required a degree. So I did end up attending University of Michigan. I wanted to just live my life. In my mind, the perfect marrying age was 25. Wasn't really interested in entertaining anything different prior to 25. Now, lovely, didn't really want to talk about that part, but right. So I tried it. It didn't go well. Ended my first marriage, and now I'm very thankfully have the love of my life and a second chance. But I did wait till that magical age of like 26 because I just figure science-wise, right, your brain's not fully developed till 25 anyway. So prior to that, I just wanted to travel. I wanted to, live different places, do different things. And luckily, I did a lot of those things. Get a lot of living done because the stereotype was always you get married and then you sacrifice some things. and perhaps you won't be as free as you were before.
So then you came back around like 25, 26 and just kind of married the first person or you had already been in a
I was in a relationship for quite a while in college, and like I said, not a great chapter, but I was, and we got married shortly after I turned 26, and I adopted Justice and Lorenzo with him, so I'll always be thankful for that. And then we got divorced. We grew different ways, and yeah.
Was that early on in the marriage, or was that multiple years in?
It was multiple years in, and I will, in all accounts, say part of it is anybody that struggles with infertility. That's like a horrible route to go, and it breaks a lot of marriages. That wasn't our only reason for breaking, but it's a rough road to go when you discover something about yourself. I mean, adoption has always been important, and I always wanted to adopt. Didn't realize that was going to be the most viable route to go.
You had no other choice. You couldn't have a baby.
I could not have, not without a whole bunch of science. And unfortunately, fortunately, I don't know what the right word is to say. I entertained a few scientific interventions, and everything is super painful, and it's super vulnerable, and it's super lot. And I know the kind of person that I am. And when they were talking about, doing harvesting and doing delivering and all, it got a little too sciencey for me, and I decided that wasn't the route. I put the halt on the whole thing and said, no, I think I'm going to adopt, because that way at the end, I have a real live child. It's probably a heck of a lot less heartbreaking, and that was the route I was going to go.
And like I said, adoption was a huge part of your story. I mean,
huge part of my story. I mean, I always knew I would. It just didn't know how viable that option was going to be. And so, go back to my childhood. So I was married when I pursued the rest of my higher education, getting my master's. And my mom, again, she's usually the voice of like, I don't know, reality sometimes, but maybe a harsh reality. She's like, it's going to be really difficult to finish going to school with children. Maybe you shouldn't do this. And of course I went again, watch this. And so I pursued my master's degree at Lawrence Technological University and ended up getting a master's in science. And my two little critters attended my graduation. So, sometimes those types of motivational things, or those bumps in the journey, they happen for a reason. I mean, I wouldn't have the two kids that I have, I think, had my first marriage been roses and butterflies. But it was humbling. I don't like failing at anything. It's not a place I'm real comfortable as a human. And I had some preconceived notions, right? That, my parents have been married successfully for, I think they're going on 56 years now. I mean, they have an epic love story. So being raised in a family with everybody having significant long-term relationships, the D word was not something that was a good thing. And I wasn't sure if I was going to heck in a handbasket or what was going to happen, but it wasn't a healthy place to be, so it was time to be done.
Was your family religious? Did they have a value structure that you think
did.
supported that? What were the things that you think that really kept them bonded? Because it is amazing to hear those stories of a true love story, as you just said. 56 years.
56 years.
What was the glue that kept them together so well? Are they religious? Are they what is the central piece?
Religion plays a factor, but I think it's just their value system. You don't give up easy. And that was a piece of what they passed on to me, is that you keep fighting for what matters. You keep working. You keep, giving your all, even when it's hard. And one of the things that I teach my children, and one of the things that I think is really prevalent in my second marriage to the love of my life, is the fact that I choose him. I choose him daily. Yes, I love him. I love him immensely. And yes, I maybe need him. But at the end of the day, I need me. I choose him. I choose him when it's hard. I choose him multiple times a day sometimes, but I choose him. And I think I still stand on my own 2 feet. When you go through a divorce or any kind of devastation, you have to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. I'm the only person I trust wholly. That's just something that I have. I value who I am, and I have a strong sense of self-worth, but I choose him. And I think that's what my parents have been doing over and over and over for the last 56 years.
Yeah, I think what you just put into words is exactly correct, in the way that you have to first love and value you, and then you have to choose to battle for that other person.
Yeah.
But they have to be loving themselves and then returning that same type of
absolutely.
energy to you.
Absolutely.
Because
when they don't, it gets
yeah,
unhealthy. And
you
not
can be
okay.
going all in for somebody, and if they're just not all in on you, you might have to cut the cord. Like
Exactly.
So it takes two people that have that sense of like, I know I love and value me, and I want this person in my life, not this like, I can't live happily without you,
or I need you, or
that turns into an
can't.
unhealthy thing.
Absolutely, and it can turn real quick
100%.
when you're not being self-reflective on lots of factors. So I think, there's no magic to my parents. It's, at the time that they got married, marriage was a bond forever. It was paramount. That was
massive.
what you were going to grow up and do.
That was the American dream. Was like,
it was
you found the
yes.
person, you had a loving family together, and you ride into the sunset.
Exactly.
That was the story we were all told.
Well, and in my mom's era, one of the things that I am very thankful for to my mother was that she did not go to college. So because she did not, I was. Because of her, I can. So she tailored my entire childhood, my entire life to be all of the things and do all of the things that she maybe either didn't have the opportunity to, didn't have the resources to, whatever the didn'ts are. And, the double edge of that is that sometimes our relationship can be a little tumultuous because she created exactly what she didn't want to be, or what she did want to be but couldn't do herself. So we can butt heads sometimes.
But that's, the ultimate goal of parents, right? Like, the ultimate goal is to provide this life that you didn't even have.
Exactly.
Everything that they had.
Give them more than you.
Strong people want to lay an incredible foundation for their children in the future to be able to stand upon and be like, wow, look at these blessings that I've received.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And you can't hold that over their head. You just have to lay the foundation because it's the right thing to do.
Exactly.
If you try to hold it over their head, then there's going to be resentfulness.
No. We've worked through all of our things. The older you get, the more reflective you become, and the more thankful you are, and the more things that you realize it was always out of love.
So you referenced that you love to travel a lot, and you referenced earlier in the podcast that you've seen other places where you realize how much you shouldn't take for granted. And that's an experience that I've had in my life, like traveling to Africa, traveling to China 5 times.
You've been lots of places.
In so many places around the world, seeing the favelas of Brazil. You might think that like, wow, I have it hard, I'm struggling. We are unbelievably blessed beyond measure. Even a lot of the people that I know that consider themselves like struggling.
Oh, absolutely.
Are light years beyond what I've witnessed in the world. And how did that shape you? Like when you start to travel and you see the world, because I know how it's shaped me.
Right.
And you see these different things, you tend to come back with a different viewpoint. How would you say
absolutely.
How would you say travel has influenced you, and why has it been so important that you would preach to others that like you need to see the world? What does it do?
Part of it was the cultural references to my life. It exposed me to all kinds of different people from all kinds of different cultures doing things in ways that I never thought about doing things. And I think it allowed me to come back and look, that, through someone else's lens, what I do may be weird or not cool, but through their lens, what I do may be weird or not cool. So it kind of got me out of that ethnocentric mindset or being all in my own head. Some universal things, that a smile's universal, laughter's universal, love is universal. Just seeing the parallels that were very powerful was also part of shaping who I was. There's a couple experiences that stick out. One, we were in Jamaica, and my dad and I witnessed a man, and we don't know whether he was innocent, guilty, whatever. We didn't know quite what was going on, but there was a police officer beating him with a baton up and down the street. And I can remember my dad feeling, sheltering my eyes, pulling me to the side, and just that feeling of safety. And of, again, not knowing his story or the rest of the story, was it abusive? Did he earn that? Was that an appropriate punishment? Wasn't it? And just that's still a powerful memory to me, that people in power can sometimes not be the best. And when you're in power, and I don't know, but I've grown up wondering what happened to him. Is he okay? Is what was going down that caused that occurrence? And then again, that I had these people that I was growing up with that are my parents that keep me safe no matter what happens, no matter where I am.
Yeah, and those things are way more common than you would think in a lot of places around the world. When we landed in Africa,
Yeah.
the regular guards were standing there with assault rifles, or not
That
even
was, yeah.
like
yeah.
a AR-15, which is not an assault rifle; it's an Armalite rifle.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to upset my Second Amendment people.
No, and I don't want to upset them either. I am all about the Second Amendment as well. So,
but literally, they have heavy weaponry.
They have weaponry that's definitely as intimidating
Yeah.
to somebody coming from the United States, where you can go into a bank and out of a bank without.
I remember that it was just shocking. Like,
Yes.
I basically, landed in Africa. We were in Senegal,
Yeah.
and there's just people walking all around with combat shotguns and
bayonets on the end,
yeah.
or like I said,
Yeah.
this beating baton. Like, I didn't know that was a thing as a child. Like,
It was pretty wild. I was like, wow, like culturally, it's just a part of where they live.
Right.
But to me, it was very shocking.
Yes.
Like, whoa.
like, whoa, I bet, and just thankful that my parents raised me with some respectful values so that I knew not to step out of line.
Oh,
when
yeah.
That was not a place to.
Listen, if you go to Africa or you go to South America, multiple places, or Brazil, and you like try to talk back to police the way that we do here,
Oh, yeah.
they will drag you out of the car and beat you half to death.
I agree.
Almost every time.
Yes.
They're like, you will not.
Well, and that's why I said, like, even as a young child, I realized that perhaps that person had done something that was not appropriate or somehow deemed that type of
Yeah, it's
response.
wild. It's wild, though, that what they allow the authorities to do in
Yeah.
other places. You know what I mean? Because,
Right.
like, I'm against police brutality to the fullest.
Well,
But
I mean, I don't
also-
think there's anybody that's like
No.
pro,
Yeah.
I would hope.
But-
Not anyone we hang out with.
But, I mean, I put it into perspective about,
Right.
like, right now, if an officer, like, grabbed you by the shirt, you'd be like, this is insane.
Right.
Versus in other places,
Right.
we've witnessed insanity from authority.
Oh, absolutely.
And like you said, without knowing the rest of the story, maybe that guy just murdered somebody.
Yeah, but it was an
But it was a
early memory,
childhood memory.
like stuck in there, and likewise, we've discussed teachers and teaching. I can remember my 5th grade teacher grabbing a kid by the ear and dragging him to the hallway, and he was going or he was losing his ear, I think. I mean, that's how it felt.
That phased out right as I was growing up, because I remember my parents and people slightly older than me would talk about, like, they would have a ruler, and if you talked up, they'd smack your hand.
Catholic school a lot. We didn't have the ruler. I did hear from some of my friends in Catholic school. I can remember getting whipped with a eraser, the nice ones that we used to have to bang with chalk, and they just would whoop it across the room. And if you were you'd get hit. I mean, we weren't injured. I wouldn't look back and say I had an abusive educational experience, but I definitely knew where the line was. And I knew that Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so didn't play.
Why do you reflect back and think that that's not out of line when, like, any kid nowadays, if you stood up in your class and you chucked an eraser and you
I'd
hit
be
a kid, you would be barred from teaching forever. You'd be
Yes,
on
I
the
would.
national news.
I would.
It would be a traumatic experience
Yeah,
for the
it
child.
would.
Why?
That's a good question. Why don't I think I wasn't hurt in the end. I learned where the line was. I wasn't, the eraser did not have the capability to truly harm me. Did it maybe sting a little bit? Sure. But so did the dodgeball that we were allowed to throw. It was the way it was. Everybody in the classroom, nobody cried, nobody called their parents. Like I said, back in the day, if I would have rather stayed at school. I can remember writing an apology letter because we had a guest teacher, and somehow they probably had to call my parents because they couldn't email them. All the parents got a call, and I had to write this apology letter, and I remember saying, but I didn't do it. And it didn't matter if you did it. You were in the room at the time, so you didn't stop it, did you?
Yeah, see, that's where I was kind of going with this. It's almost like the value structure or the collective consciousness of society has changed over time. Because that's how I viewed it too. Even if I was a part of some place, and
Right.
let's say you're out with your friends and your friends are getting into some trouble.
Exactly.
You knew you were going to get in trouble if you guys got caught, because
Absolutely.
you shouldn't even been part of that.
I shouldn't have been part of that. I should have dragged them out of that. I should have called their parents. I should have left. If I can't take ownership for what they're doing, I still can take ownership for my own
Those
self.
were the exact lessons that I was taught, is that you have to step up and do the right thing.
Yes.
You have
All
to be
the
the
time.
hero of the story.
All the
you
time.
have to be the one that makes the good decision
Right.
versus the wrong decision.
Right.
That's what slowly changed, or at least, like I said,
It
anecdotally.
has, and I
I've
wish
witnessed.
I had the button when it changed, or because I did not. None of my teachers harmed me. In fact, many of them made me a better person. I do think had I have seen one of my teachers, beat somebody in an inappropriate way, absolutely, I would have sounded the horn or ran out of the room and got an authority bigger than them or whatever. But that just wasn't the case.
So what do you think? This is a great way to kind of segue into you're running now for county commissioner.
I am.
And that's a really important thing nowadays where we need good people wanting to represent other people because we all see society shifting. And I think most normal people or most non-extremists,
right,
their differences aren't that major. Like you have differences, but you can have conversation by them.
Absolutely.
But then you have extremists that are the loudest, that are the ones trying to influence people the most because they're extremists.
Right.
That are almost winning nowadays because so many good people for years have learned to just stay out of politics.
Right.
Just don't discuss this, that, and the other thing. We need more regular people getting back into the conversation. Right. What do you think are the biggest things that we need to look at as a society that need to be addressed? What made you decide to run? And what would you think are like the just fundamental focuses of if you were an elected official first at county commissioner level, and let's say you go higher,
right?
What would your focal point be?
That's funny that you say that.
What would your focal point be?
How do you know I always want to go higher?
I'm reaching higher.
Reaching high. Okay. I was like, wait a minute. What do you know that I don't know?
I already know that if you get into it and you have success and you're able to make a difference, you're going to go as far with it as you can, which is
you're not wrong.
Which is what you should do.
Right.
But what do you think are the things in our society that we need to be focused on the most? Like, what are the strong viewpoints that you believe, like, this is what we need to change?
Education. I mean, people need to be paying attention. If there's not something in education that's upsetting you in some way right now, you're not paying enough attention. And
what do you mean by that? If you're willing to divulge on this podcast, because, like, vagueness never really, like...
I gotcha. Well, I just think there's a lot of push in education, like you said, a lot of, I don't want to say power, but there's a lot of things. Educators are not indoctrinating children. We're not. If I'm being 100% honest, if I had, first of all, that would assume I have power that I don't.
Well, you do. You are an adult with children.
However,
you and I, if we sit with a classroom of children, we could convince them across a wide array of things, and we could persuade their little minds because they're not fully formed. They're not as articulate.
No, I agree with you in that way, but I don't like that word a lot, and I don't like indoctrinate.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think it assumes a place of bad intent.
Well, I think if you look at just indoctrination, whatever your beliefs are, you are indoctrinating those children if you are teaching your beliefs. Now, that doesn't mean they're bad. Throughout history, we were indoctrinated by a certain set of values and systems, right?
But I have very little control of what I actually teach in the classroom. That's coming from the federal level, the state level, and if I don't want to lose my job, I'm teaching the state standards. I'm teaching what I'm supposed to teach.
And with indoctrination, it's hard to really think of it that way because, like, if you're just teaching subjects,
right?
Who cares if you indoctrinate someone into mathematics?
Well, exactly. If I am indoctrinating, I'm indoctrinating them into the provided curriculum that was approved.
Yes, exactly. If you're doing your job correctly.
Right.
But now there are examples. I'm going to give you one exactly from my life. Braden goes to Brighton schools. I'm not going to name the name of the teacher.
Okay, good. Because then
his science teacher during all the 2020 just recently, this was only about maybe 4 months ago, no more than maybe 5 months ago. Asked the class who had gotten their COVID vaccine. And this is to children. This is the 13-year-old kids.
Okay, that's a no.
And then went into saying that you're putting yourself in danger and you're endangering all the other kids in this room if you don't go home and tell your parents that you need to get this vaccination.
That hurts my heart. That's not professional.
Is a 13-year-old child.
Yes.
Who, first of all, has no idea the science of anything. Who couldn't make that
decision for himself anyway because he's a child.
He doesn't even know what his immune system is.
He
doesn't even know what a vaccine is supposed to do. He doesn't know any of these things.
Right.
But he came home to me concerned about, like,
of course.
James, you want to know what my science teacher said today?
Yeah.
You know how I haven't gotten the vaccine?
Right.
I'm putting the other kids in danger. That's indoctrination. Because that is an ideological stance on a controversial
I understand what you're saying.
Issue that in 20 years we may view very differently.
True.
Right?
Because we were all living that experience together.
So now that is indoctrination.
I see what you're saying.
In a real world example.
Okay.
In science, if you're teaching science, that's science.
Right.
But as soon as you start to spill over into things like that, I think that's where concern of parents is very relevant.
Right.
Because I was actually bothered. I was like, are you kidding me?
Right.
And then I actually know that teacher is neighbors with his father. And I was like, I wonder
Oh.
if I should just have a conversation with her. And I'm like, you know what? She'd
Yeah,
probably be so.
I'm curious about what you did about it.
I chose not to because I'm like, you know what?
Okay.
If I go over there and I knock on her door,
Right, right.
she's going to probably feel like I'm like attacking her about it, which
Right,
I'm
right.
not. It's
Right.
more of, it would be just as wrong for me to go to
Right.
your children and tell them, listen, your mom's stance on this medical thing is this. I disagree fully, and here are the
Right,
reasons
right.
why. That's your child.
Right.
And that is a major boundary. And when
Right.
Braden is being sent to school,
Right.
it is to learn math and science and basic social skills,
absolutely.
respect.
Right.
It is not to hear your ideological opinion
Right.
on a controversial
On
issue.
anything.
So,
like that.
so I think as soon as things like that, and if it's happening to me,
Right.
it is happening more than just that once.
Right.
Any kid that was a part of that classroom, it took
Heard
place
it.
too.
Right.
100%. So I think that is where the fear may get ramped up. Like maybe
Right.
just like one isolated case that the media might show.
Right.
Hey, this took place.
Well, and I think that was a key thing you just said is fear. And I mean, we know from Reaching Higher, right? Fear is facing everything and rising. And fear can sometimes be false evidence appearing real. And it's important to have the conversation so that you know. I mean, yes, there have been things that, our curriculum, though, is all available online. So parents, what I mean by paying attention to education is pay attention to what your kid is learning. Volunteer in their classroom, volunteer at the school, which I know obviously in the last 3 years where we had all the craziness, that wasn't an option. But it's usually an option. It's usually an option to attend your local school board meetings. They happen once a month.
Yeah, I think we actually need to start doing this.
And
way
if you
more.
haven't attended your local school board meeting, you can read the minutes online. I mean, I feel like it's as much a part of education that parents stay informed as it is that I stay informed. And so as far as education, what I mean by saying, if you're not upset about something, you're probably not paying attention. You're probably not paying attention. There's a lot of things going on. There's some, the way things get passed. I mean, oftentimes people think that's educators that have the control over that. No, we're really just doing the job in the classroom, and all of those other things are set bigger than we are.
Superintendent probably is establishing.
Well, yeah, I mean, like
school
that
boards are
chain of
regulating.
command, right? Like a local government. I mean, understanding the basic fundamentals about how things are set, and what do you do if you have an issue with a specific educator? What is the way to handle that? Is it a conversation where you knock on their door at home? Probably not. Because you're right, you're going to put somebody on a defensive out of the gate.
And that's what I didn't want.
And you're probably
feel
not going to have a valuable conversation where the two of you maybe can meet in the middle on something, or she can genuinely apologize for, her lack of thinking before saying what she said. But, I don't know her. I can't apologize on her behalf. But I know that we're human like everyone else.
That's why when you're saying things like, well, the curriculum is there, 100 people could teach a curriculum 100 different ways.
Absolutely.
So really, that's why it's important to have good people in teaching roles, and that's why
it's important to stay informed. I mean,
100%.
if there's something that's making you uncomfortable, letting your 13-year-old, I guess, remain in said situation the whole school year, their parents have a lot of power in things.
Yeah, but I don't look at it like I never want to avoid things. Like imagine I say, "Hey, I want Braden taken out of that
Right.
classroom." I probably could have got that to happen.
Right.
But that's not life. What I want is him to see the individual as they are and
Right.
realize that like, "Hey, you're just a person."
Right.
And your opinions could be off.
Right.
And later in life when I'm an adult, I'll form my own opinions based on
Absolutely.
information.
Well, and Braden, this is how we do things in our home. We look at the claim that was made and we gather some evidence and we reason through it. And, here's how our family feels about this. And yes, people have differing opinions. We all have them. But claim evidence reasoning, it's never my job to tell a kid what to think.
100%.
It's my job to get them to think.
Exactly. Or, show them what thinking is.
Right.
How
What does
to
that
critically
look like?
think.
How do you critically think? Is it you go to one resource on the interwebs or one family? No.
One soundbite, one headline.
Right. One whatever. And I mean, headlines, don't even get me started on that rabbit
No,
hole. But, so education is at the key of everything for me. I mean, I think you need to stay informed of your educational system. What are the things you can do to support your school teachers? Do they need pencils? Do they need, somebody to come in and be a public speaker about a certain subject? Could you volunteer for that? Now, even if they don't take you up on it, you're putting yourself out there and letting the person know that you have an ally. because it isn't my job to educate your child on every single thing. I'm in a partnership with the parents. I'm in a partnership with the school system.
Like you said, if anything, if you're really a successful educator, you are training children how to think.
How to think, not what to think. Never. That's not my job.
And maybe the importance of why you should think. Because
Right,
there's a lot
exactly.
of people that don't
Please
really
be
think.
thinking. Please be thinking. Like, if you want to come to me with something, we want to investigate it, whether it's controversial or not, depending on how it fits into the curriculum, right? Or if it's a safe thing for us to discuss, go ahead. What is your evidence for that? I'll read your article. I'll look at because every day I'm not the only teacher in the room, if we're being 100% honest. Usually there's about 33 of us, myself and 32 students. We're all teachers. We're all coming from different mindsets and places and meeting together. So I think education is obviously a huge reason that I think people should stay involved. I'm irritated about the broadband and the discrepancies that we have. I think that was pointed out throughout the time that we were shut down. We're in an advanced society. You and I are sitting in here with multiple types of equipment. Yet we had, even myself when I was educating online, if I'm running a meeting, my husband's running a meeting, the kids are running their Zooms or whatever, just the pure amount of broadband capabilities and just all the things, we need more equitable broadband across Livingston County. We just do. Because we vary from very rural places to very advanced places, but all of our children deserve to have the same amount and the access to resources.
100%. I think it would be hard to dispute that. Obviously, there's infrastructure and figuring out what a budget for that looks like and working out all the little details. But
of course,
we know for a fact that we want to do that.
We know we need to do that.
Yeah.
It needs to be a priority. It needs to not be on a back burner somewhere. That needs to happen because, yes, we've survived this period of time. People usually say pandemics are every 100 years, so I hope this is my only one. Although I want to live for a very long time, but 145 is really old. So, I don't really want to see another one, but I would like to know that in the future that people are set up for if there's a need for everyone to be remote at some point, whether it's because a lot of jobs, too, are now going remote. If you can work from home, why not?
Well, so many companies realize that they don't need to have a brick and mortar location
exactly.
and force people to show up in one spot and pay these outrageous overhead prices when they're like, wait a second, we can get efficiency done from their homes.
Exactly.
They can spend a little bit more time with their families. It's almost a win-win for a lot of situations.
Yeah, there were a lot of pros that came out. I mean, people don't always look at those, but I tend to be a sunny side person. Like I said, I visit the dark here or there, but I don't want to stay there.
Yeah, 100%.
So I try to find the positives. So that was one. And then the other thing is veterans. We need to do more with our mental health services, not only just for our veterans, but for everyone. Like you said, and we discussed with anxiety. Something's got to be done. We have to have more funding and more people in our schools that are trained mental health specialists to help children navigate things, educators navigate things, adults navigate things, veterans navigate things, because the isolation that many people spent was not healthy. I'm not a doctor, but it was not healthy.
No, I don't think anyone would argue that the mental health of this country has slipped dramatically over the last couple years. And we need
to do something.
Over the last couple decades.
Oh, absolutely.
People are struggling. So as a healthy society, we need to figure out, how do we start getting the trajectory the opposite direction and provide support and service for the people that are in a really bad place right now.
I mean, I'm not willing over the years. I mean, I've been a successful educator for over 15 years. I've lost students.
No, yeah, suicide's been a massive part of my story.
And I know
countless people to
and
suicide.
I never want to lose another one because you're never the same.
100%.
And our veterans, 22 a day, that's way too, 22? I mean, people that are out there willing to sign on that line so that you and I can do what we do and express our ideas freely and
I can
enough.
hear the love and support you have for veterans and military service, but again, across culture, that's been eroded away. Just like people are very hateful towards police, people are very hateful towards military service at all, and and these things, those are human beings. Those are people from towns all over America, from every race, from every background, that believe they are trying to support the freedom and good things, and now you're hating them from doing that. Now, you could be against the overall mechanism of war. You could be against the overall machine that, wants to send troops around the world and we're the big brother.
Right.
Okay, but don't be against your neighbor's son who
Right.
thought that he was just trying to go and make a difference.
Exactly.
That's a problem.
Exactly.
100%.
So, those are like the main things on my platform. I mean, what made me want to run? Again, going back to my childhood, if not me, then who?
No, I love that.
I didn't know who the who was, and I kept looking around for who's going to be the next leader. Who has a voice strong enough to stand up for that? Who understands diversity? Who understands this? Who can see the world in my lens? Speak strong enough about things, stand up for things, backed up with evidence and reasoning, have difficult discussions with people that sometimes feel very differently than I do. But how can I be that voice? Because the role of county commission, right, is the liaison between the everyday voter and the next level of government. So just like in the schools, right, the teachers to the principals there's a chain of command. So I was looking around and I didn't find the person in my district. And then, you look in the mirror and you're like, well, maybe I should give this a go. And at the end of the day, if I don't try, maybe it's going to be a missed opportunity.
You made the right decision. We need good people that want to stand up and
I appreciate that.
And join the fight. What made you decide to be a Democrat?
What made me decide to be a Democrat? That's an interesting question.
I'll tell you, I'll admit this on the podcast. I've never in a single election my entire life voted. Not left, right, nothing. Because I don't really know the people.
Really?
And I'm not buying into someone's stories. I want to know a human being if I'm going to support them. I'm not going to just give my support without starting to know somebody.
Right.
So I could believe the media's version of this person.
Right.
Positive or disbelieve it. But I don't really know. So I've always focused all my energy into my own life. Well, in the last couple of years, I've been really getting drugged into this. And honestly, as shocking as it is to say, and I'm going to say this on the podcast, I actually see myself probably running for an office in the next couple of years.
That would not surprise me in the least.
Because if good people will not stand up and try to do the right thing, then
who will?
Then the greedy, corrupt people that want all the negative sides that come with politics will be the ones that are going in. Right. So I'm not for that at all. I'm for, we can have differences all we want. As long as I know you're a good person, I'm backing you.
And I can't sit at home and just watch anymore. There's something about.
So I started to sit down and say, would I be a Democrat or would I be a conservative? And that was a very interesting decision because Democrat and conservative over the course of even my lifetime has shifted dramatically. Like how charged their stances are, what they believe in, what they support, what they don't support. I've watched it evolve over time. What made you say, I am a Democrat?
Have you done any of the political survey type of things? Like the things like when you're trying to figure out where you are on a policy or where you are on something that you take this little survey and it kind of shows you, or if you follow certain media outlets, what those media outlets, where their stance usually lays?
No. Well, I mean, I don't watch any media. I don't watch any news.
I don't either, but there's definitely little tools, right?
No,
so if you don't know, you can take a, poll. But for myself, this is actually a really interesting question. And honestly, growing up, I mean, I've always voted. My parents taught me if I didn't vote, then my voice isn't as loud as it should be. Because I can sit at home and complain about the person in an office, or I like this policy or I don't like this policy. But if I didn't vote, I didn't put my voice behind it. So I've always voted. Aside from that, I never knew growing up what my parents' political lines were. Politics were not discussed. That was not something. I mean, you might discuss political policy, but you didn't discuss, dad voted for so-and-so, mom voted for so-and-so.
I think we need to do that more. I think if we don't talk to each other and inform each other and show people who we are and why we believe what we believe, we're only holding everyone back. Because it's kind of a line that's been around in our society, like you don't discuss politics and religion.
Exactly. So to be 100% honest with you, I don't know that I knew. I knew I was an issue voter. I know that in the past, I've voted Democratic, I've voted Republican, I've chosen not to fill any box in because there wasn't a candidate that I felt I could back properly. I've written in one here or there. So over my whole life, I've had different opinions on different things. And there's some Republican people that I've loved. My brother-in-law is one of them. My brother-in-law is the Oakland County Commissioner and a very strong Republican, and I love him. And we have great discussions. We feel fundamentally different on some things, but on some things we don't. So why Democrat? It tends to benefit my family the most. When I look at what the Democratic Party stands for in the most part. And where do you find that? I mean, you do your research and figure out what the party itself stands for. Most of my values and ethics align with the Democratic Party.
What do you mean by that?
Like looking at, well, also when I'm in education, I'm a teacher, and teachers tend to be Democratic. A lot of the policies that are set by Democrats tend to directly affect educators.
Yeah, that
Some
I've
of the
definitely seen that
funding, some
connection.
of the, different things that happen when there's a Democratic person in power, there tends to be more funding for public schools. Now, somebody's going to hear this and argue with me and say, no, that's not true. But there are a lot of things respecting diversity.
One of the things that I have seen that you just referenced
Yeah.
is most colleges and high schools are extremely left-leaning, extremely.
Yes.
And if you have a conservative viewpoint, you will be ostracized, shut up, get canceled, whatever you want to
Right,
call
right.
it. But if you say even some outlandish shit, as
Right,
long as
right,
it
right.
falls on the left side of the spectrum,
Right.
there's not really any recourse. That's dangerous
interesting.
too.
I agree with you. I'm not a
Because,
big
again,
far right or
extremists
left. Right. Extremists. That's
need to
not.
be-
it
that's
need
not
to stay
normal
at the
people.
extreme. Right.
100%. But I've seen a leftist controlled institution from like higher education and
Well, and I mean,
high
just
schools.
like anything, like if you choose to watch the news, you need to know which way your news is leaning, because that's facts that different news outlets lean different ways. So whether or not you're going to follow just one, then you're going to go down a rabbit hole or a path that, all your morals and values are going to come from one thing. I tend to be somebody that, I believe in diversity. I have to. I'm the mother of 2 black sons, raising 2 strong black men.
Are you saying that people on the right don't believe in diversity?
I don't, but I can tell you that there's been some things said recently with some people that chose to put the R after their name that said that they don't. Now, is that all people? No, I'm not going to ever go there. Am I going to name drop? No, that's not my style. I'm not a smear person. I'm just saying where I look at the funding, I look at the policies that are set, I look at the type of people. Like when I walk into a room in certain places and I feel like all the heads turn and look at me like I'm some sort of outlier, and just my collective life. Now, honestly, you and I spoke a little bit before we went on the podcast, and sometimes I would say probably I fall somewhere independent, somewhere in the middle, that sometimes, I'll lean this way or that way. However, we both know that if you don't do one of the 2 main parties, you're not going to have any chance of getting elected anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the two-party system is so ridiculous for
Well,
us.
and maybe it's something that eventually is going to change, but the way that it exists right now, my options were to be a Democrat or a Republican. The Republican Party never reached out to me. They never basically came any Republican person like, hey, we think you'd be a great candidate for our party. The Democratic Party did that. They were very welcoming. They offered to support me and help me learn as I'm going through the process, because I don't know everything about politics. I'm an educator, and I'm not a government educator. I'm a teacher that teaches science. So I know a lot about science, but I didn't know everything there is to know about political funding, about all kinds of different things. I mean, this has been an educational journey, if nothing else. Not only that, but I'm a proud union member. And unions tend to be supported by Democrats. And I was raised by a union member. I'm the vice president of my local union. And the National Education Association, which is the big overall teacher association, they just ran in Washington, D.C., a program called See Educators Run. And like you and I said, we need good people in office. Well, they said, here's all these people that are collectively setting policies for educators. And how many of them have ever been in a classroom? How many of them have ever, been in a classroom during a lockdown drill? How many of them have ever, navigated somebody that's suicidal? How many of them have ever had the angry parent phone call about yada, yada, yada? How many of them have ever served any time other than being a student in a public education situation? How many of them have ever been in a classroom?
No, it makes sense. And it's crazy that the head of the Democratic Party here reached out to you, because it is smart. Why wouldn't you be finding the people in your community
Right,
that
that
really can fill the role
yes.
correctly, and kind of propping those people up and giving
Right,
them
saying, hey, I'll support you, meaning like there's advisors, people that will help you, that you can, come and discuss things you don't understand in a safe environment, and I I said that you've had Bobby Bright on, and he said, well, why don't the only thing you're doing wrong in this race is you don't have an R after your name. And I said, well, I respect that you think that. And I said, I just want to be fully transparent. No one in the Republican Party came after me. Now, if they had, maybe we'd be sitting here having a different conversation. I don't know that. But I know that the Democratic Party invested in me as far as education-wise. I know that the NEA, the National Education Association, I went to Washington, D.C. and had an amazing training where they provided me all kinds of different things about political campaigns and how you run a political campaign. And their goal was to basically see educators across the United States run for various offices because they know we know our stuff. They know, for the most part, right, we're good people. They know all of those things. And so, to go ahead and have all these resources sent at me and then bite the hand that feeds me, that's not something that I'm going to do.
No, that makes sense.
So, and I know that you can't be wishy-washy when it comes to politics. You have to put the R, you have to put the D. So I chose the Democratic side. We also spoke as well that I do like that in some ways the Democratic Party has less contested races. That it's myself versus my opponent, as opposed to, and I'm sure you can relate it to fighting, right? Like if you're training for a fight and you don't know if you're getting in the cage with 3 different guys or 1, that's a big difference. And if you can't mentally and physically and educationally prepare, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I know I'm running against one person.
Speaking from my own experience, because I've been really kind of like paying attention the last maybe 2 years since the pandemic, because I'm like, I can kind of see I might end up falling into this. Yeah. I do see Democrats as way more like supportive of other Democrats. Like they're way more group identity. They're way more like, hey, we're going to protect all the people in our thing because we believe in this stance, and we're going to build that up.
Things like that. It's the same kind of mentality. We're stronger together.
They're much more group identity. And Republicans, conservative people tend to be more very strong individuals.
Right.
But then they will almost battle with the other individuals on their own team. And I've had a hard time deciphering which I think is healthier. In my mind, psychologically, I think this is much healthier to be an individual. And because let's say I decide to go Republican or conservative.
Right.
If there's another bad Republican running for office, I would be against them, not because they're a Republican or whether they're Democrat, because you are not a good human being, or you're not going to do good things for people, or you're getting into it for the wrong reasons. Versus I've seen a lot of my Democrat friends, they're almost willing to overlook a lot of things as long as the person is still a Democrat. And that's a little bit of a slippery slope, because it's like,
definitely is.
No matter what side of the divide you're on, we should always be trying to collectively find what people are the right people.
I agree with that.
It's like the D and the R should almost be secondary to, like, if Mrs. Spisz is a good woman that is going to try to do the right thing for her community, that is so much more important than, well, I can't vote for her because she's a Democrat.
Well, and to be 100% honest with you, that's what I need to count my campaign on, as my character and my value system and what people know of me. Because the reality is, if you look at Livingston County and as a whole,
it's more red.
It tends to be a Republican county. So there is, a win number, a number that you're supposed to get of votes. And I am going to have to either meet some people that don't know which way they go, or some people that generally vote Republican and say, you know what, but I know her. I know her heart. I know what she stands for. I've seen her actions in the community, that I'm not making this stuff up for some political run. This is not.
She would stand up to the extremists on both sides.
Absolutely. That I don't back down really ever on anything. I don't scare easily. I don't, and at the end of the day, we can have intelligent conversations even when we may see differently. And I also can separate personal from professional. That I'm not coming into this only using one personal lens. It's not about my religion or my any of those things. It's about who I am as a person, and that if you elect me, it's my job to represent you, all of you as voters, to the next level of government. So if the message you need me to send is this, that's what I'm sending. That I'm not taking my own, personal viewpoint on it and trying to.
Yeah, it's a difficult road to navigate because of the system that you're forced to play within.
Yeah,
it's not,
I'm learning a ton, but I'm really, really hopeful, and I'd love the opportunity.
One of the things that I've never been able to answer as I bounce between where I really fall in a line is almost all of the places that are left-run, supported economics, leadership, government, mayors, district attorneys are the worst living conditions in the country for the people. How is it that the group that it says like the people at all levels of people of every ethnic background, of every belief, like we care about equality. Equality is like the main word that I relate to the Democratic side. Like I really think about equality when I think of Democrats.
Right.
But if you look at Detroit, San Francisco, Chicago, Philadelphia, all of the things where it's like exclusively left run, Philadelphia is like on track to have the most murders it's had in the last. It's Chicago. People are dying at rates you can't even imagine. San Francisco is atrocity. And why is it that so many left-run places are the worst living conditions for the people from the group that is like, because like Michelle Spisz would never create this.
No, I would not.
But yet the party on that side that is exclusively controlling those areas, they've been left-run for decades while claiming that all these other reasons. Why is that?
That's a really solid question. I wish I had that answer easily to say, well, it's this. I don't.
That's something that I've been trying to understand.
I mean, that would be something that I think is obviously worth looking into. And I think, sometimes what happens is you have a policy block somewhere along the way. So you only have so much power.
I get it, but if you're left controlled from mayor all the way to prosecuting attorney, all the way up, all the way up.
But that's not necessarily where all the money is coming from. Sometimes it's a federal trickle down, and we
Sure.
know that everything, the way the government was created, is checks and balances.
Well, under Biden, I think we had a left House, Senate, and a presidency.
So you never, and then at the end of the day, how much is really one person's control?
No, I'm looking at, we had the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the president, all leaning Democrat.
Right.
There are no blocks to anything that you put in effect
So
for
you
that
think
period
it should
of time.
just be boom and we should be able to fix all that problem?
I wouldn't say it would be overnight, but there's no blocks. You can't say that it's these people stopping it. You would instantly enact all of the injustices, all the things you claim that you've been just, we almost got this through, but we got blocked here. If you are fully in control of all three branches of government, not branches, but the actual sectors of the House,
then
the
how
Senate,
can
and the
things not
presidency.
get passed faster? Or how can things not be even
There
if
is
they're
no
passed,
roadblock.
how can they be?
You don't need a single Republican to support anything that you put through, and yet nothing monumental changed.
So how are those things fixed so quickly? I think they can't be fixed, or they're not fixed as quickly because it's systematic. There's more to the story than just let's pass this policy and boom, it's enacted and everything's fixed. I mean, unfortunately, in some of the areas you mentioned and in some of the things that I think about in my head, there's systematic changes that are going to have to happen as well. It's not a funding issue. It's not a one issue fix.
No, I agree. And
so I think
we hear about systemic issues.
Yeah, I feel like.
But when I look at the worst examples of where you would not want to be or raise a family, it is in the areas that are controlled by the people saying they want the better conditions.
Right. And I mean, just because I want something doesn't mean it's going to happen or that it's within my power to fix it all the way along. And I don't know. And truly, just because there's a Democrat in control doesn't mean that the underlying system, it's never a one and done. It's never one person.
No, I agree.
In some ways that can make that kind of change. Obviously, myself, if I truly had that power,
you would.
I'd be out in the trenches doing what I needed to do.
No, yeah, I was just
even if I made a difference by doing affordable housing in one area, that's still 5 or 6 people, that are now living their best life or on their way to it. But that's the way I think, and maybe part of that answer is the thinking, whether it's Democrat, Republican, whatever it is. Like you said, maybe that needs to be secondary to who the human is that's in the office.
I agree with that 1,000%.
Because there's a lot of people, that the human in the office, puts the R or the D. But at the end of the day, the human there doesn't have the foot power or the whatever it is, the machismo, the spiz magic, I like to call it. They don't have that. I'm not afraid of the word no. I'm not afraid to get in the trenches and try to fix something.
Well, and I think that's crucial. Even since the Constitution was written, the idea of a more perfect union has propelled us to don't ever look at where we're at and think that it's good.
Right. I'm not
Well,
a good enough kind of person.
yeah,
I'm always like, what's next?
Yeah,
Like, what do we need to fix now?
I said that wrong. Like, definitely always appreciate exactly where you're at, but then be like, how can we make it better?
Right.
Right. But we also, in my opinion, live in one of the best cultures in the history of the world.
Absolutely.
Like you know history, you understand history,
Well,
and you've traveled.
Right. I have.
And,
right.
Like in many places, things are far worse than what they are in the United States. Far worse. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive for better.
Right.
But one of the things that, I'll be honest, that I've been a little bit worried about is the idea of equality has gotten distorted.
Oh, absolutely.
And you feel that way as well.
Absolutely.
Equality can never mean cutting someone else down to bring something else up.
No, because that's not equality.
That's not equality. The whole premise of equality is to treat people as equal and to give them the same opportunities and like not have any barriers of entry or roadblocks, which I think in this nation we've eliminated most of any major inequality things, unless there's something that you would reference that you would say is not. But like we obviously through women's rights and through
we're getting there. We just took a little slide, but that's the
What do you
women's
mean
rights
we took a little
issue
slide?
is tough for me right now.
Roe versus Wade.
Yeah, that whole the whole.
No, actually, we should talk about
because
it for a second.
I'm really
Because
passionate. I mean, we've got all these people like saying here, there, everywhere, right? But when I adopted Justice and Lorenzo, there were 27,000 foster children in the state of Michigan alone. 27,000. As an adopted human, I told you it's always been something that I've wanted to do. Not just because it's the right thing to do, but because there are children waiting, not for perfect parents. You know, you can be single, you can be
How
all
about
kinds
just some love? How about somebody just
how about
cares
that?
about
How about
them?
that, right?
How about like someone gives a shit about me?
Exactly. Somebody's going to pick me up from school every single time.
Every little human deserves that.
Every single time. And I get so passionate about the fact, and I mean, I'm an infertile female. So, like, maybe my voice doesn't matter in this, but I feel like it does.
But how does that tie into Roe versus Wade?
Because with Roe versus Wade, you're still trying to regulate my uterus, even though it doesn't work.
No,
you know what I'm saying? Like, as we're making rules and laws about women's bodies and what their ability is to be able to do with it.
No, yeah, that's slippery
a
slope.
slippery slope.
Making rules and laws about anyone's ability to
body.
do almost anything that doesn't affect you is extremely dangerous. But when I looked at Roe versus Wade, I actually got into an argument with my fiance on this. I said, because I said, listen, first of all, I'm going to preface this with I am not in all in support of what I am going to say is going to happen, but I bet you it happens.
Okay.
Roe versus Wade will be overturned because on constitutional law, the argument that was made initially that had passed is like it has extremely weak foundations.
Well, why are we revisiting that one? And
I don't know how it came back up. What I'll say is, but if you look at the original thing and you try to see the basis of the argument on why it should be a federally protected thing, the argument is incredibly lacking substance. And I said, listen, I'm not saying that they're going to make the call that I agree with, but I'm saying that if you look at purely constitutional law and the way that it is written, Roe versus Wade is going to be overturned. And she was like, there's no way. It's not going to happen. I go, yes, it will, because it is abortion, as weird as it is to say this, is not a federally protected thing. It is something that would be reserved to the states. Now, whether I believe a single state. Wait. If you understand that, though, then you would be in support of it being overturned. So you got to be careful saying I understand that.
Okay.
Because
let me pause.
All I'm saying is,
lay it on me.
I thought that it is not going to be a federally protected activity, that would be deferred to the states. Now, I'm not saying a single state in the union should say that it is illegal for women to make that decision.
Right.
I am not supporting that at all. But show me anywhere in law how you could argue that Roe versus Wade was accurate in its original decision, that abortion should be a federally protected activity. And I said, I believe you will fail. And I believe that case will not hold up. And she was like, no way. And
I think they'll argue it under the human rights laws.
Yeah, so when I did all the research on it and looked into the original stance, I was like, this is not going to hold up, and it's going to get overturned, and people are going to be so emotional because they're going to be like, well, this is a basic right. It's not taking away your right, but it is putting it to a different governing body of the states. But if you say, well, it should be a federally protected thing, well, then you're opening an incredible precedent for federally, we could almost regulate anything. What about when I say you have to take this COVID-19 vaccine? You have to. Because if we can federally regulate this medical decision, Why can't we federally regulate this medical decision?
Well, if we're worried about federally regulating decisions, why are we only revisiting things on women? Why does it seem as if it's a war on women?
I agree with you. I agree with you 1,000%. Why did we revisit
I mean,
this
I wasn't
one?
at the constitutional table, and no one here that's alive now was.
I agree with you.
Are we? I guess that's the slippery slope that I struggle with, is how are we now somehow putting on the hat of the original, founding fathers, not women.
And I agree
and
1,000%.
looking through the lens of how, it was men, but I'm supposed to feel as if it was humankind, which also includes women.
Absolutely
how are we
wrong.
now putting on the lens and revisiting things like that?
I would like to see, why did it come back to the discussion?
Me too.
I am intrigued by that.
I am
But
as
then
well.
on top of that, like when we interpret law,
Right.
we do have to look at it through the lens of the truth and not the way that we feel.
Of course, because feelings always get muddy.
They are
and
muddy.
Everything.
So that's what I was trying to articulate to my fiance was like, I'm not even saying that I agree.
Wait till after you're married to start taking on those slippery slip arguments. I'm just saying.
You know
no,
me.
I
I'm
do,
always
I do
gonna
know
take
you.
it
You're
on.
already doing it.
I'm
no
always
matter
going to
what.
take it on. But I was like,
She's a good woman.
All I'm saying is I believe it'll be overturned federally because nowhere could you argue that that was a federally protected law.
So if it's overturned federally, like you believe, then what do you?
Then goes to the states. It's the 13th Amendment.
Right. So it goes to the states. So how does that keep all women still?
Not the 13th.
How do they keep them safe?
How do they keep women safe? The local
Like, so if I
legislations are
live
the one
in
that-
Michigan and Michigan says, no, Michigan is not going to protect the right to do that.
Well, then I think the
What are my
constituent-
options
I think
then?
the constituency just flat out says that we are like constituency drives action, right? If people in a community say we will not live under these, conditions that you're setting forth, politicians won't have a platform to stand on. Not a single person will be elected that supports women not having the right to control their own bodies. That's how it's going to work. And like I said, I believe fully in all people's ability to make their own decisions with their body. But I don't think as soon as you elect the CCP in China, in communist China, which when I was over there, the living conditions were literally subhuman.
Oh, I'm sure.
I could not believe how horrifically those people live.
Right.
The not in crowd. The wealthy
Right,
people,
the wealthy
a couple of the Chinese government came to the fights, and these people were kings. They were literally gods among people, like the way they were treated. The rest of the people were in the worst living conditions I've witnessed personally ever in my life. Worse than Africa, worse than Rio de Janeiro.
So China was the top.
Horrific. The government over there has extreme power. They can regulate all kind of things.
Right.
If you speak out against them, it's like widely known. You'll just go missing. And maybe your whole family will go missing too. So I think as soon as you allow the government to really start over-regulating anything, it's dangerous. And what I was trying to convey to my fiance was like, listen, I am not in any way against I feel the same way that you feel about that topic. But what I am against is a massive overreaching government that can make decisions so far beyond what it was put in place to do. And if local maniacs want to be like, I don't believe that you should have the right to do this. Just don't support those people. Just refute. The constituency would refuse to support
So more
those
back
people.
to power of the people, and the people need to, again, be informed
The
so
more
that
you
they
can
don't elect.
Push power back to us.
Gotcha.
The CCP in China is king. They
Okay.
run everything. They control everything. The living conditions are subhuman.
Right.
If you think you have it bad here, visit there.
No, thank you. No, I may
So
visit
the
anyway,
more,
but
the more the power is here, the
Right.
more dangerous it is. We have to get it back to communities.
So are there other things on your radar that you think at the federal level that we need to reopen and revisit and relook at?
I'm sure there's plenty if I really dig into about what's
curious.
regulated federally. Like obviously, even the masks on an airplane, I was adamantly against it.
I know
right?
you were.
Because it
Yeah.
should be your choice. If you would like
Right.
to wear a mask, like now, every single flight I'm on, there's no masks.
Right.
COVID still exists. People can still get sick, but you have the freedom to make your own choice.
Right.
But we started to see an administration that started to trample that idea, where it was like, well, you know what? I was supposed to shut this academy down until November of 2020.
I know you were, and you took your stand, and you didn't.
Masks were
Right.
enforced.
Right.
You could be thrown out of places.
Right.
I was refused to go into Best Buy in Brighton because I wouldn't put a mask on.
Really?
Another place. As soon as you start over-regulating things, it gets really dangerous. And that was my only point to that,
Okay.
was the more you push power down, me and you, if I'm Republican and you're Democrat or whatever, we may agree on tons of issues because we're deeply connected to our communities.
Absolutely.
And we're good people trying to do the right thing.
We are.
The more you take that power away and you put it all the way at the high end, we can't reach those decisions.
I see what you're saying.
We cannot reach those decisions. So you open the door for tyrannical approach much more. You open the door for, uncontrolled power.
Right.
The more you allow the power to reside at the top. Now, I bet you there's a list of issues if you and I went down and went like, let's challenge this one federally. Let's challenge.
Right.
I'd probably be in full support of that. But there's also this interesting dynamic that's happened a lot in modern culture where when someone cites a certain thing, instead of talking about that thing and breaking that thing down, people instantly go like, well, what about this? What about this? What about that?
Right.
Maybe we agree on all of them.
Right.
But we have to first tackle, we have to have a focal point.
Right.
We have to say like, okay, with this issue,
right,
how do we solve it? How do we make it better? How do we improve it? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so anyway, I told her that I said, I believe that it will be overturned and here's why. And it was like verbatim, like exactly why. They cited the original case. They showed how it was more of an emotional cultural movement at the time.
Well, of course. I mean, things are very emotional when you discuss subjects like that. I mean, it's very emotional, and it also is.
What do you think federally that should be challenged? Like when you brought that up, what else do you?
I'm just curious. I mean, you really always make me think. I think that's one of my favorite things about you is that.
Here's another good one. School shootings.
Oh.
You are a teacher.
Yes,
what a
sir.
better topic for us to dive into than what do you think? Because we have a mental health crisis.
It's a mental health crisis.
But as someone who has a ton of respect for veterans and you grew up in a very patriotic America and you understand the Second Amendment, you're in full support of the Second Amendment for people?
Yeah. I mean,
So it's
would
like
be a hypocrite if I said I wasn't.
That's what I mean. So like that taking away the guns are not the answer.
Right.
But we have a dynamic where people can get shot because guns exist. And you and I, if I could snap my fingers and remove all guns from the world, I would do it. And I've said that since I was a child. Without a doubt.
Okay.
Because then if people couldn't simply move a finger and take somebody's life, that would be a better world.
But they can do it in different ways.
100%.
That's the piece of where does it stop then?
Exactly.
Because if not guns, what would it
No,
be?
that's why
we've had people take out people with all kinds of things.
Well, that's probably where people are going to listen to what I'm saying and take it in a way that I don't mean it.
Okay.
I don't mean that I don't believe that guns are just a tool, because they are. They are only just an object. I'm saying if there was this utopian world where they had never, weapons hadn't been existed and people couldn't take each other's lives, well, then I would do that. But that's not reality.
No, it's
and
not.
whenever we detach from reality and we get into like my truths or things like that, it's very dangerous, because the truth is they do exist.
Right.
And if you were to try to like, well, since a school shooting happened, let's remove guns from citizens.
Right.
Anyone,
I'm not for removing guns from citizens.
Any criminal will just know that you have an unarmed population now, and they can be more.
Well, I think that goes
dangerous.
back to. I mean, it was probably before your time, but when we had the drug programs in schools, the DARE program, right? I didn't know about half of those drugs until
I know
they'd
come in and be like, methamphetamine can be made like
can be made in your medicine cabinet.
Wait, what? Wait a second here. You're just opening doors for curiosity.
Right. I was like, oh, geez. Like, I don't know how this is a claim evidence reasoning. Okay.
So claim evidence reasoning. What do you think if you were governor or you're a high level, official that can really enact change?
Right.
People are screaming about guns right now. It's it's a very hot topic. What do we do? What do we do about a school shooting? How do you prevent those things?
Mental health services. We need more people in the schools. We need more trained people in the schools. I am not a mental health specialist, but many days I feel like society is calling on me to be that. When you have a child break down in your classroom, you have two choices. Like, what are you supposed to do? Ignore it or try to deal with it the best you can, which means obviously trying to get them to the person in your school that is trained, but that's if they're in your building that day, or if they're, we are so, I don't know the actual statistic off the top of my head, and maybe I should, but we'll chalk that up to first podcast. Next time I'll bring my stats. But we are severely understaffed with social workers, psychiatrists, not psychiatrists, just psychologists. Schools cannot prescribe meds. That was a faux pas. So psychologists, not medical professionals, because schools don't do that.
I agree 10,000% that we need more people to help the children. It's
Smaller class sizes. I mean, I could go at a whole list. I mean, smaller class sizes. When you have one adult with 32 students, I mean, there's no doubt that having smaller class sizes would help the connection between teacher and student. And the more connected children feel, the less likely they are to do
100%.
random things, whether it's, misbehave in the classroom. I mean, because it's not rocket science. I mean, we can look back on any educator. The kids that need the most love in your classroom often act out in the craziest ways. Whether they're not turning in their homework or they're ripping somebody else, those are the kids that are saying, notice me, notice me, notice me.
100%.
The ones that can sit in the classroom and do what they do, no matter who the educator is, no matter what's going on in the room, they don't need the teacher quite as much.
I think you are 1,000% right, and we should provide way more services to not only assist the teachers, but to really provide students with what they need.
Right.
And I'm going to preface this with a little word of caution, though.
Okay.
Where we have to be careful telling kids too much that they like when you tell a kid they need all this mental help and you give them a psychologist,
Right.
Sometimes you can kind of undercut their own power a little bit and tell them, like, you are the person that needs help. You need this.
Of course.
There's the right amount of, like, I need to be there for you at this time. But then there's a right amount of, like, you've got to get out of the nest.
Right.
You've got to find some
Well, yeah, you're in a hole with a shovel and you can keep digging or start climbing. We need to start climbing.
So it's really important to make sure we're building strong people.
But where are those classes? I mean, like you said, people don't want educators, doing this or talking about that. So if you do want them teaching your child self-worth, where is that class?
Yeah, like Reaching Higher was that class.
Reaching Higher was that class. And as you know, we had 25 children each year that were selected. We really need 250.
I was going to say, imagine if you could do that for each student at some point
imagine
in their
the
school
power
year.
of a mentor for each student. I mean, that's where it is. It's in the connection. I'm not faulting parents these days for being at work. They have to. The era of a stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad, that's unfortunately just not a reality for many families. I understand it. In some families, right, mom's working all day, the kid comes home and mom comes home and the dad goes to work. I get it. We need more support systems, whether it's for community centers. What is there in downtown Fowlerville right now for kids to do?
100%.
What is there? There's
bored
nothing.
Kids tend to get in trouble.
Oh, wait. Yeah, there's that.
Oh, there's some alcohol.
There's no arcade. There's no movie theater. There's no, anything for a kid that walks. There's not a whole lot of places. The Torch 180, love that. They've created a safe place where kids are allowed to hang out, but they close at 3:30. So what is there for our kids to connect to other than craziness?
I think those are words that you absolutely need to carry throughout your campaign, and you need to make sure that you're always pushing it. Like, hey, I've been there.
Yeah. How are you connecting to kids?
I know what our children need.
Yeah.
How can we make it happen? Who do I have to talk to
Right.
to explain the importance of this aspect?
I mean, that's,
Addressing the school shooting side, though, regardless of the mental health, do we have armed security? Do we, what?
As far as, now again, I back the blue. I've always backed the blue. I am a good police officers keep me safe every single day of my life.
Does a local police officer or two,
from what we've been told, is that we have a sergeant that they patrol our parking lots regularly. We have locked doors that can be locked within seconds. And that the number one, when you study any school shooting, that the number one piece of prevention is a locked door.
Makes sense.
People are not looking to come into a classroom when they're crazy if they think no one's in there. So the number one thing that I think that people can do, obviously, is have locked doors in there or some kind of system where their doors can all be locked very, very quickly. Having a system at the front door, right, where we're making sure that there's a camera and we're only letting people into the schools that belong there and they're, stopping at the office and being marked and all of those things. And there have been, unfortunately, in some of the school shooting situations, there's been some lack of judgment.
No, 1,000%.
There's been some errors there with people leaving doors unlocked, and I certainly am not going to throw fault on other educators because I can't imagine.
You and I, though, are in 100% agreement. You know what? Unfortunately, evils do exist in the world.
It does.
And unfortunately, it could come from mental illness, or it could come from just sickness of the mind, or it could come from an evil person. But if we stick our heads in the sand and want to just be like a fairy tale where it won't happen, that's where we're doing a disservice.
No, we can't do that.
We have to properly prepare for if the wolf comes to your door,
Right, what are you
you
doing?
might have to use the shotgun to protect
Right.
your family from the wolf, okay? But you can't pretend that the wolf doesn't exist.
No, I agree. I think that's naive, and it's going to get people hurt. It's not okay.
Well, it's great to hear because you're solution based. You're like, how do we solve? Because if you and I could snap our fingers and take the mental illness out of the world,
I would
we
fix it in a
We'd fix it over a
heartbeat.
heartbeat.
Oh, yeah,
No,
absolutely.
we'd never want to see someone harm people like that ever again.
No.
But those people are going to live their lives too, and
Right.
they're going to find ways to try to harm people.
Right.
We have to do what we can to try to protect
A locked
people.
door is number one. So my doors lock really quickly. Preparing your students. I mean, if I could ask parents to do one thing, it would be to talk to your student about the importance of being quiet and following the directions of the teacher. Like you and I spoke, there seems to be like a disconnect there, because I have no problem writing up a student who talks during a drill. Because if you do it during the drill, you're going to do it during the real thing. And the reality is, when we had the horrible shootings with kindergartners, 5-year-olds were able to stay quiet and save lives. 5-year-olds. And what saved them is they were quiet. They were quiet in their classroom. They weren't talking when they were in a lockdown, and that's how they went home.
And hopefully, if we have armed security on the property, if we have police there, hopefully
Well, and
it
we
can
do.
stop even
I mean, most
before
schools
that.
have a liaison officer and things like that. And I've been assured, like I said, I believe it's 6 seconds. I was just talking to Chief the other day. I think it's 6 seconds that they can get to me. So I have about 6 seconds of time that I have to keep my immediate environment safe. And again, ALIS training, I believe is what it's called. And it's an acronym for something, but that's basically that, we are no longer doing the sitting duck type of strategy that, when it comes down to it, and you and I both know from our backgrounds, right? You're going to be fight, flight, or freeze. And some of us won't know which one we are until we have to experience something. Unfortunately, fortunately, I guess, haven't had enough experiences in my life. I know which one I am.
I was shocked by when I was going into Fowlerville for like reaching higher and stuff.
Yeah.
I can walk right in that school at any time of the day without a single person addressing me. I could walk to any classroom I wanted.
Right.
I was shocked by that. I
Yeah.
actually went home and said that to Stacy. I was like, it's very bizarre.
Right.
A random adult, like, because I know I'm there for a purpose. I know I'm there
Right.
for a
You know
reason.
what your purpose is, but we need to know. And we need to be comfortable as educators to stop you. Like,
Exactly.
I don't know who
I'm
you
like,
are, sir. What are you here
I
for?
should not be able to. And you know what? It shouldn't just be as simple as, oh, I'm blah, blah.
Right.
Because then that's an effortless barrier.
Exactly.
We need to really have
Tighten up the barriers for sure.
protocols in place to realize that because evils exist in the world, we need to do. Those children deserve to be protected.
Right. And parents need to understand, yes, it may be a little bit of an inconvenience for you in the pickup line or the drop-off lane or the whatever.
Deal with it.
You may, have to be asked to pull out your ID, and we're sorry that your wallet's in the car, but you're going to need to go back and
And the first time we stopped someone that was going to commit a horrific crime on your children because we did this process, you would be the first one in line thanking us, saying,
Right.
we appreciate you keeping our children safe. So go through a little bit of inconvenience
Yes.
because it is for a better system
Right.
overall.
And I mean, I can't tell you how many times that in the media, right, teachers are heroes after things happen, and then we're right back in the bottom of, well, they don't do this. I would lay down my life for any of the students I teach, any of them, even a student I don't teach. I know that.
Well, that's the media.
And I know my last day of teaching would be the day I have to call a parent and say, I'm sorry, I couldn't save your kid.
100%.
That's it. Game over.
Yeah.
I'm done.
So that's
And
why proactive.
Proactive. We
need to
have
look-
to talk about it. Parents need to be involved. We need to know. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think everybody knows, right, who's on their team if something goes wrong. I get on a plane, I look around. I'm like, okay, that guy's on my team. That lady's on my team. I'm going to let that baby, I have to protect that baby. Any room I'm in, I know 5 different ways to get out. Being proactive about strategies. Have your head on a swivel. If something doesn't look right, it's probably not right. Report it. Don't think about it and report it 2 days later after so-and-so's on the news. Talk about it right away. I mean, in so many of these stories and cases, there's signs, there's warnings, there's things.
Almost always.
That
There's
we're
like
not
posts
right.
on social media. I'm going to do this
Right.
to the school.
If you see something, say something. The worst that's going to happen, you're going to be wrong, and it might sever a friendship, but
That's
it could.
okay.
But that's okay. At the end of the day, it's not my job as a teacher to prove it. It's the police, it's the FBI, it's the people that are trained for those things to take the information I saw and do what they need to do with it. And I'm never going to feel bad about being wrong. I would rather report something and let them do their job. And to tell you personally, I mean, my niece is a senior at Oxford this year. So that story and that thing is way more than just a story. to me.
Every single school in the nation should realize that, hey, these things can happen.
Yeah.
What have we done so that if it tried to happen here, it's not going to happen, or it's
Right.
going to be minimalized to the fullest? Because unfortunately, evil will find a way just like good can find a way.
Right, absolutely.
So you have to do what you can to protect things in advance.
So they need a plan. I mean, police liaison
Exactly.
officers, great. Having a relationship with the kids with those officers, great. Having the things in place. I mean, of course, I'm on a need to know. Do I know everything that we have in place? No, because I'm on a need to know. But do I know that there are things in place? Yes.
100%.
Do I feel safe going to work? Yes. Do I know how to lock my door and do my things? Do I know what I would do in an emergency? Yes. You know, whether or not armed guards, I don't know. That's a double-edged thing, too. Do we need metal detectors? Maybe. Do we need clear backpacks? Maybe. But, I mean, you're also talking about a society that has to decide where they stand. I mean, right now, I can't take your kid's cell phone without people flipping out. I can't.
Yeah, that's a problem.
You know, there's so many different things, right? That if I tried to say, like, oh, you know, that shirt's inappropriate, like we're getting in a fight about that, because even though there's a dress code in place, you feel like your little darling doesn't need to follow it.
You're going to be on the media as
So,
this person
right.
that.
So until like we address the little things too, you know, you want me to lay down my life for your child. You do. Every parent does. But
I
do
should
you
have your backing a little bit then.
just
I should have a little bit of your
maybe a
support,
little
maybe.
bit. You know, maybe at least ask me first before, you know, like I said, like it used to go home and I would have rather stayed at school. Because if the teacher said it happened, it happened. And whether or not, you know, I choose to discipline my child differently at home because there's a little more to the story they didn't tell the teacher, that's between you and your parent. But we need to back our educators.
I agree.
I mean, if you don't have my 6, how do you expect me to have your kid's 6? And I mean, in reality, in Fowlerville, like something goes down, I know there's enough people in the community. I mean, we all know that will come up to the school. Now, that's a double-edged thing, too, because people say, oh, everybody needs their cell phone. Well, cell phones block signals from emergency. I can't tell you how many times at a fire drill, right? We're standing outside and a kid's like bebopping trying to be in the street. I'm like, could you please come and stand on the grass where you're supposed to? Because you're going to get run over by the fire truck when they come flying in, if this was real. You know, just a lot of things they don't think about. Even though your child's 13 or 15 or 9, go over your emergency procedures. This is what mom and dad or whoever, this is what I expect of you. When your teacher says this, you practice like it's real. Because then if it ever is, you're so much better prepared than if you talk through the drill or you know, waving to your friend over there in the line. I mean, I don't play.
100%. Being prepared for terrible things is an unfortunate part of reality.
It
you
is.
You just have to be prepared. And I mean, you know, it's hopefully those things never come to you.
Of course not.
But
right.
You don't want to be unprepared when they do.
No, and I feel like a lot of the training that I've had as an educator has also prepared me for real life. You know, what do I do in a case of an emergency when there's been a fire drill at a hotel I've been at? I know exactly what to do. Why? Because I've practiced tons of times. So I think it's important.
So before we wrap this podcast up,
Yes, sir.
if there's any other topics or messages you'd want to send or things you'd like to address or just anything at all, you know, to capture in this glimpse of, you know, time or have conversation about, we'll do that. If not, you know, we'll wrap this thing up and I'll wish you the best support in your future endeavors. And
Well, thank you, sir.
you know, and for all the people listening, like I've known Michelle for multiple years. I've done Reaching Higher program with her. I was one of the mentors. I've witnessed her give her heart to a lot of people around her. I don't know how fully we align on every issue, but we do align in the fact that good people want to try to do their best for people, and I do know she's doing that.
Thank you.
So just anything else you'd like to capture? And
There's one other thing I'd like to capture, and I'm going to kind of get my little talking points here so I don't mess it up.
let's do it.
So recently, I became a part of a really pretty fascinating project. I found out that my great uncle, my dad's uncle, was a war hero. And basically, during World War II, he was in a bomber called an Avro Lancaster. Okay. So that he was in an Avro Lancaster, and basically they went down over the Atlantic. And I'm working with one family member from each of the families that were on the flight. So they basically reached out to me on the internet and said, hey, are you related to? And of course, you know, I'm like, oh, that sounds scammy, right? So my yearbook class and I together, we researched everything that we had been told to make sure we weren't being scammed. And they were great. It was a great lesson about, you know, being careful on the interwebs and what information is public and what do you give out there. Well, it turns out it's actually a legit story. So I'm working with the other families, and it was a Lancaster R5695, which C for Charlie. And we're working to correct the official record so that these men can be recognized as war heroes and have the crew's resting place designated as an official war grave and perpetuate their story. So it's something that I've been investigating myself, and now I'm like all in. And so in November, we're headed over to England, which will be my first time in England. And we're going to basically have a ceremony to try to recognize it as an official war grave there. And each one of the family members is having somebody come. And so it's really special because it'll be the 80th anniversary of the day that the flight went down. So that's been my latest pet project historically.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, why weren't they recognized in the past? If it was like a...
Well, this is the interesting part of the story. Part of the reason they weren't recognized, there's 3 Americans that were on the flight, but they jumped the border to join the British Air Force. Because at the time in World War II, the United States wasn't quite as involved in the war at the time. So apparently down in Detroit at some of the gyms, like the Kronk Arena and stuff like that, they had people coming over with these flyers like, hey, young men, you want to sign up for this? You get to fly in these things and, it'll be great. Just come to Canada. So they would kind of get them to come over to Canada. So my great uncle had an address at the local YMCA that he was using as his address. And so he joined the Canadian Air Force. And so 3 of the men, when they went down, they were Americans. But to get them recognized as Americans as far as POW and MIA status is difficult because they were serving under international forces. But it's been a crazy, phenomenal story to learn about. I was very honored earlier this year for the Memorial Day Parade. My great uncle was from Trenton, Michigan. So I got to go down to Trenton with another relative from the flight, and we were able to lay a wreath at a memorial there. And I feel like, even though I never met him, I feel like I'm helping his story come alive and bringing it full circle. And actually, the necklace that I'm wearing, we found out I inherited this from my parents. They decided to give it to me early because I don't plan on them going anywhere anytime soon. But because I've been doing all this investigating, this was actually made from the ring that my great uncle had proposed to his love before he went to war. And
wow.
Yeah, it's a stargazer sapphire, which they're pretty rare. So when the light shines on it, it looks like a starburst. So my mom had it made into a pendant, but she still has the original ring box and the ring. So I feel like I'm carrying him with me and trying to keep his story alive. And I want the world to know, who he was and who the Lancaster crew was, and just, their service and sacrifice is definitely not forgotten by the family. And it's interesting. In Trenton, they put up flags for the memorial, and they always have a British flag up, and people stop and question them. Why is there a British flag? And that's for my great uncle. So that's a story I'm pursuing now. I'm always up to something.
There's a famous quote that's going to really resonate well with you, and it's, you live as long as you are remembered. So you're basically helping that man live. You know what I mean? Because if he's in people's memory and his service is recognized and the character, the decisions that he made are valued,
right,
you're helping him be remembered. So the quote is,
Thank you. I love
live
that.
as long as you are remembered.
I love that.
And that's amazing. You know what I mean? Because he could have been forgotten. That could have been cast to the side.
Oh, it could have. And I mean, it's been an amazing story. I feel like all of the people that I've met through the story have become family. And it's an incredible story. I mean, the Parkin brothers, they've been researching it for 18 years. So when I went down and met with some of these gentlemen that were doing some of the research, they had files on my family. Like, this is the home they grew up in. And what a surreal experience to have people that are researching your family, but you were the missing link. So it's just beautiful, the timing of how it happened, that I didn't miss the 80th anniversary, that, all the
stars
things.
aligned.
The stars aligned, serendipitous. And I just, don't believe, I believe everything happens the way it's supposed to. You might not always agree with it. And I guess the only other thing I want to say on the podcast is I did not mean to spend that much time on my ex-husband and not my current one. So Very happy. I don't know. You want to ask questions about him?
No, all,
Okay.
all the words you said about your husband were the love of my life, a wonderful man.
Okay.
So you painted the picture very clearly.
Okay.
It's just that we were, digging into more of like the formative years of your life.
Okay,
He has
gotcha.
been a phenomenal chapter. He's been
He's
been
the
the
best
support
chapter.
system you've needed. I saw you light up when he was around when I was giving the speech for Reaching Higher. Like,
Thank you.
I can see it. You know what I mean? So all the words that you sent his direction
right.
were incredibly supportive
Good.
and incredibly valuable. And you painted the other part of your story as just what it was. It was a life lesson.
It was a lesson.
It was learning.
It was a hard one.
Growing. And you probably weren't a fraction of the person that you are now, and he probably wasn't a fraction of the person
No, I
that
mean,
he
we
could
both
have been.
had our chapters, and I mean, we attended high school together. He was older than me, so we didn't, we crossed paths, but he felt like I was too young, which I still love because I'll take anybody calling me young these days. And
so many times it's like just because you and someone else didn't work out doesn't mean that either of you are terrible people. Maybe it was just terrible timing. Maybe you hadn't grown into the people that you should have been yet.
that, and I mean, likewise, I mean, him and I finding each other after 20 years. I mean, it took us 20 years to find this epic romance, and I think it was worth every second of the wait. And I mean, I want to encourage you as well with becoming a bonus dad. I mean, it's an incredible role. I mean, the role that my husband plays in my son's lives now, and he's been in it for a significant time now, going on 11 years. Kids just need more love. So any way that it comes, but it's a significant role that you're going to play in his life and helping him guide his way through lessons and things. Being a bonus dad is
100%. It's
is
really
really,
cool.
really important and really cool.
It's really cool, and I value it a lot, and I can see the impact I've made on his life, and I can see how much he looks up to me and appreciates me, and it's bizarre because, like, I was like, man, I'm just going to be the best role model that I think I could be,
Right.
or like what I would have wanted in a
Right.
father, and I had a
Exactly.
great father.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it's funny how well that dynamic works if you're just genuine and authentic and give 100% to that person, just like they deserve. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I was always worried about the dynamic changing of like, well, you're not my father, so because
Right,
like there are lines,
Of
right?
course,
Because
of course.
I am
There
not
is.
his biological
Yes.
father, but if I'm just the best man that I can be in
If
his
you're the
life,
best man you can be and you love him the
That's
most
victory.
that you can give, then you're going to be the best bonus dad that he ever had. I prefer bonus to step. Step always sounds like it's like removed or some kind of
Yeah.
weirdness. So I think you're going to be a phenomenal bonus dad. And I appreciate you giving me the time to do this. I guess the only other thing I'd want to say is people should look into foster care. There's still, if anybody has any questions, they could always reach out to me because it makes a difference. It made a difference in my life, my brother's life, my son's
I know
lives.
many people that have been infected by foster care.
And there's tons of children waiting. So, get out of your own way and start interviewing and see if you can, become a safe and wonderful place for a kid because all kids deserve love.
100%. Well, we've recorded 2 hours like it was
What the
nothing.
what?
It is 3:15.
Shut
No,
the
it's
front door.
3:22.
Oh my goodness.
So it was a great dialogue. I think we touched on so many different topics, so many different things. There was a lot of insight dropped. I think people get to see a good glimpse into who you are for the people
thank you.
that don't know you. And I think we need more authenticity now. We need less headlines, less sound bites, and more just like authentic.
am
Looks
who I
into
am.
people. So, and you are very proud of who you are, and you're not ashamed, and you're willing to stand in that. And I think that's important. So
Thank you.
I thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today.
Of
We'll
course.
wrap this
Thank
up.
you for having me.